Chapter 966. The large pavilion was completely silent. The group of people from Taihua Mountain at the entrance supported each other as they staggered away. The luxuriously dressed man's face was drained of blood, and his aura was so weak that it was undetectable. He had been directly crippled, and he had fallen from a beginner god to a mortal. His life source had also been cut by more than half. He had aged a lot in an instant, and his black hair had lost its color, turning into a deathly pale color. Everyone in the pavilion was horrified. They retracted their trembling hands from that group of people and looked at the center of the pavilion. There was a huge icicle. The icicle pierced straight into the sky from the center of the ice, like a blossoming ice flower. Its edges and corners were releasing shocking cold air. The cold air released by the black ice could even freeze one's meridians. Their gazes paused on the black icicle for a while. Then they turned their gazes to the rainbow-haired woman upstairs, whose gaze was still cold. They felt a little confused. There was a god and underworld expert in the group of people from Taihua Mountain, but he was still crippled by a mere demigod. She didn't even put in much effort. It was just a snap of her fingers. No one could see what happened in that instant. They didn't even feel the fluctuation of energy, and the attack had already been completed. Those who seek death have their own way of dying. Taihua Mountain, you think too highly of yourselves. You should feel honored to have our boss personally take action. Kneel down and lick my feet with satisfaction, worm. Nightmare glanced at the group of people at the entrance and sneered. The luxuriously dressed man trembled. The intense pain from his entire body made his eyes red, and his face aged a few decades. He stared at them with a venomous gaze, and his voice came out from between his teeth. Just you wait. You will die very miserably, very boom. An extremely bright golden flame pillar shot into the sky. The holy light cut through the haze in the sky, sprinkling a patch of blazing sun and golden ashes. The group of people from Taihua Mountain was directly hit by this golden flame pillar and flew hundreds of thousands of meters into the sky. It was estimated that there would be hundreds of landing points. Yin Nuoxing looked at the charred floor by the door, then turned her head to look at Ming helplessly. She sighed and said, "You stupid angel. I asked them to go back and report this so that we wouldn't have to do it again. Why did you split it into a few hundred portions? It's too noisy. It's not a problem to let someone else handle such a small matter." Ming stuck out her tongue, then looked down at the crowd and said, "Who here is familiar with Taihua Mountain? Go back and tell them that the music domain has declared war on them. Let's have the final battle of the day after tomorrow." Those few informants have been divided into hundreds of groups and are floating in the sky 100,000 miles away. We have to find someone familiar to talk to. Everyone's expression was horrified, their faces turning green. This girl's face was incomparably beautiful, incomparably sacred, making one's heart calm down with a single glance, unable to have any thoughts of sullying her. However, how could this face speak such terrifying words? How could it be divided into several hundred pieces? By the way, those who don't come are grandsons, Yuan, she said again. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand to make the dark ice dissipate. She sat down and drank a mouthful of tea, as if nothing had happened. Chu Xianling looked at her with extraordinary splendor, while Chu Chen looked at her with even more admiration. It could only be said that they had not been frightened by Yin Nuoxing. Perhaps in 2 days, they would be able to see her most frightening side. At that time, they might have a different view of her. Chu Yingxian looked at her in a daze. Mei Mao's expression was complicated, but she was also somewhat touched. She did not expect that Yin Nuoxing and Yuan she would go to such an extent for her, although Chu Yingxian reached out and grabbed Yin Nuoxing's arm. She rolled her eyes and muttered, "You did this because you thought it was fun, right? You even attracted a force for me. Are you really okay with that?" Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. She laughed dryly and nodded, admitting that she did this because she was bored and had nothing to do. However, it was more or less because she wanted to vent her anger for this girl. "You're the one who's holding it in. Your face turned red just now." Chu Yingxian was stunned. "Is it very obvious? It's all on your face." Everyone sighed and nodded. What she was thinking just now was all on her face. Otherwise, Yin Nuoxing would not have stood up for her. If it were any other time, he would not have cared about this. Moreover, you've only dealt with the Lingyun battle court. You have other plans, right? It's rare that you've dealt with such a big enemy. You'll definitely take this opportunity to expand your forces. If your father has some ideas, he'll make the Chu Jie an impregnable place. He'll make the Chu Jie a powerful force that can protect his family, Yin Nuoxing said. When the time comes, we will change our official name. With the Azure Emperor's city as the center, the surrounding regions and cities will be our territory. We will gradually expand our territory and become the overlord of the 10th prefecture of the Earth Cloud continent. We will then develop our subordinate forces. Yuanshi nodded and said, as we develop, we will become famous. Suddenly one day, some famous forces and the envoys of the 9 Shrine will suddenly come. Nightmare waved his hands and grinned. Congratulations, congratulations. Little Moon nodded. You guys. Chu Yingxian looked at everyone in a daze. She did not think so much at all. Her eyelids drooped slightly. You guys just thought of it, right? Just thought of it. Yes, I just thought of it. Yin Nuoxing, Yuan Shi, and Mo Yin all calmly nodded their heads and straightforwardly agreed, causing her to not know whether to laugh or cry. These 3 fellows, she was very touched. In the face of an unprecedented crisis, at least for them, this group of friends that she had met by chance had never said anything about giving up or retreating. They had even planned for the future, although she was certain that these 3 fellows wanted to tease. Ahem, they wanted to toy with the battle court of Soaring Cloud. After all, no matter how powerful the 10 districts in the northeast of Kuan-Yuan were, they wouldn't be able to put any pressure on these 3 fellows. After all, the forces behind these 3 fellows were transcendent existences that stood tall on the big stage of the divine world. As for who would be left after being played by that guy, she did not know. However, he did not hold back when he attacked. She guessed that not even a speck of dust would be left. What is this immortal origin world? Yin Nuoxing suddenly asked. He had heard about this so-called immortal origin world a few times. It was something new that he had only heard about after coming to the Earth Cloud continent. I remember that it is a cultivation treasure land in the Earth Cloud continent. It is a naturally formed hidden space that is about the size of 2 or 3 medium-sized cities. It is filled with fake fairy qi. I can only say that it is fake. Compared to the fairy qi in your bodies, it is much weaker. Yuanshi pointed at Yin Nuoxing and Xian and said, however, the power there is precious to others. The fairy qi has the miraculous effect of improving one's body and soul. As Yin Nuoxing spoke, he lifted little purple soul, who was sitting in his arms, and said, look at this girl. Her soul is filled with fairy qi. In a sense, her life is eternal in concept. Little purple soul blinked. Mei Mao looked at everyone. Although she did not understand what Yin Nuoxing was saying, she knew that he was saying that she was amazing. The little girl immediately became happy. She hugged Yin Nuoxing's head and acted coquettishly. At the same time, it can also change one's temperament and appearance. You will become more beautiful. Yuanshi coughed dryly. He opened his right eye and glanced at Yin Nuoxing. Everyone nodded and focused their attention on Yin Nuoxing. The latter was also stunned. Then his cheeks twitched crazily. If you want to say that I have become neither a man nor a woman, just say it. It is not my fault that I have become beautiful. No, little star has directly become a girl. Xian smiled and reached out to pinch his nose. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. In short, that place is where the younger generation of the Kuan-Yuan region will go. Moreover, none of the major classes will meet there. The minimum requirement to enter is to be at the immortal level. The maximum requirement cannot be higher than a heavenly god. In other words, only high-level gods cannot enter, Chu Yingxian said. Chu Chun raised his hand and said helplessly, the immortal origin ranking of the immortal origin realm is a ranking list that evaluates one's talent and combat power. It is said that the person who occupies the first position will receive a mysterious reward. Although Dad has been first before, he has never told us what the reward is. He only said that if we want to know, We can go up and take a look." After sitting for another 15 minutes, everyone stood up and flew towards the immortal lake. They entered it and returned to the Chu Yuan realm. "Xian your father's looking for you. Come to the Great Hall and ask your friends to come as well." Chu Zhangping's voice rang out in the ears of everyone, causing them to raise their heads and exchange glances with each other. "You guys can come as well." Chu Yingzhan spoke to Yin Nuoxing and the others. Everyone waved their hands. In any case, they had nothing to do now, so there was no harm in making a trip there. In the central mountain range of the Chu Yuan realm, the most majestic palace was extremely lively. Streams of people walked in and out. All of them had hurried expressions on their faces. Those who entered and exited this place were all carrying the highest orders from the Chu Yuan realm. They were all nervously preparing for the great battle that would happen 2 days later. In the central great hall of the palace, powerful auras could be faintly sensed. In the great hall, Chu Yang, Chu Zhangping, and the other experts all had solemn expressions on their faces as they stared at the map on the table. This was a gigantic map that clearly depicted the terrain of the Azure Emperor city as well as the surrounding million miles. There were 2 red dots on the map. One was located far away in a mountain range, while the other was located in the Azure Emperor city. Naturally, these represented the 2 major powers. There were many other red dots on the map, but as for what they represented, other than the person who drew them, no one knew. Everyone was discussing in low voices. These people with powerful auras were all peak stage deities and were all core members of the Azure Emperor city. At this moment, Chu Yang's ears were buzzing as he listened to the conversations of the people around him. He felt a headache coming on. Waving his hands, he wanted them to quieten down. However, a beautiful woman whose looks could topple empires stealthily walked over and spoke. "Yang, that group of children is here." Chu Yang regained his senses. He coughed lightly, indicating for everyone to quieten down. A moment later, a creaking sound could be heard as the door was pushed open. After that, Yin Nuoxing and the others slowly walked in under the gazes of many young people outside the Great Hall. They even closed the door behind them, causing the group of young people to feel extremely curious. For such a solemn meeting, the people gathered here were all the leaders of the Chu Yuan realm and the other major powers of the Azure Emperor city. Yet now, a group of young people suddenly walked in, causing them to feel extremely curious. The other people in the Great Hall also turned their gazes over in puzzlement. "Oh, they are here. You guys, second brother, third uncle, move aside slightly and let them squeeze in." Chu Yang waved his hands to Yin Nuoxing and the others as he pointed to a spot beside him. Those few young men nodded in understanding and walked to the back of Chu Yang, creating an empty space. After that, Yin Nuoxing and the others squeezed into the empty space, allowing Yin Nuoxing to stand in the center. Deity Chu, these children are?" Someone asked in puzzlement. This was a meeting place. Wouldn't it be breaking the rules if a group of initial stage demigods barged in? "Don't worry about it." Chu Yang waved his hands and smiled at Chu Yingzhan, who was winking at him. After that, he cast a deep glance at Yin Nuoxing and pointed to the map. "This is the current map. The Azure Emperor city is here, and the army of the Lingyun battle court is in the mountains. As for their numbers, we aren't too sure." "I know. I can already see them," Yin Nuoxing calmly replied. "You can see the situation inside?" Everyone was stunned. Chu Yang also looked at him in astonishment. The place where the army was stationed was blocked by a barrier. They only knew that there was a large army hidden there, but they couldn't see what was inside. Chu Yingzhan and the others were also curious. They didn't know when this fellow had investigated. Yin Nuoxing looked at everyone and nodded. He said, 13 emperor gods, 50 emperors of the underworld, 103 kings of the underworld, a total of 13,025 mid-level gods, and 100,000 low-level gods. After that, there are no more. As for the low-level gods, I can't count them anymore. What I can be sure of is that the low-level gods are consumables, and once they're used up, they can be thrown away. The army camp is filled with low-level gods, and their status is about the same as the soldiers. Previously, everyone thought that he was just messing around. Now that he had revealed such specific data, everyone was shocked. First, they were shocked at the strength of the other party. In fact, they were shocked at how this guy knew so clearly. It was as if he had stayed on the other side for a period of time and knew everything. Among the 13 God Emperors, one initial stage God Emperor is a magic array master. I don't know the details, but based on the strength of his soul power, he should be at the level of an 8th stage God Master. That War Spirit King is also among them. If your description is correct, that person should be him. Yin Nuoxing continued. Everyone was silent for a moment. A magic array master at the level of a great master couldn't be underestimated. If it was handled well, he alone could turn the situation around. There are so many gods, and War Spirit King is also leading the army personally. He must have used 80% of the combat power of the battle court of Lingyan. He must be determined to win this battle and completely crush them, someone said in a low voice. Yin Nuoxing stared at the map with his colorful eyes. There was a blue light circulating in his eyes. He raised his head and looked at Chu Yeyang. He said, "What about all your combat power?" The person who walked to Chu Yeyang's side was probably the second brother that he had mentioned just now. When he heard Yin Nuoxing's words, he couldn't help but reply, "Primary level gods." Before he could say anything, Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and interrupted him. He said, "Just tell me about the high-level gods." Chu Yeyang's second brother was slightly stunned. He looked at his younger brother in confusion. When he saw him nod, he also nodded and said, "There are only 6 God Emperors that can be sent. There are 30 Emperor of the Underworld and 66 King of the Underworld. By the way, all the important people are here." Oh, after getting the specific answer, Yin Nuoxing nodded. He propped himself up on the table and stared at the map. The light in his eyes was a little strange. No one could guess what he was thinking. Chu Yingzhan pulled on Xian's sleeve. The latter turned around and saw her winking at him. He thought for a while and shook his head, indicating that he didn't know what Yin Nuoxing was thinking. He's probably thinking about how to get rid of them all in one go. Xian hesitated and guessed. Ming and the others agreed with this answer. A certain someone who hated trouble was probably looking for a place to start. Everyone in the hall looked at each other. Many high-level gods had some opinions about these little fellows who had suddenly barged in. The meeting hall was such a serious place. They couldn't be serious when a group of little fellows suddenly appeared. However, when they saw that Chu Shan didn't say anything and was even looking forward to it, they couldn't say anything. They could only hold it in. Yin Nuoxing muttered to himself for a long time. After about 15 minutes, some people in the hall who were more impatient than him couldn't hold it in anymore. They couldn't help but say, "Little fellow, do you see anything?" This person's words made Yin Nuoxing raise his head and look at him. He then turned to Chu Shun, nodded, and said, "Pen." Chu Shun was stunned. He subconsciously handed over the feather pen on the table. Yin Nuoxing took it. Under the gaze of dozens of people, he gently drew a huge circle around the red dot on the mountain range. According to the ratio, the diameter of the circle was about 100,000 miles. Circle. Everyone was dumbfounded. What did this circle represent? Are there any spies or other things in this circle? Yin Nuoxing asked. Chu Yang's second brother scratched his head and said helplessly, "Some people have been arranged in the forest to investigate the background of the Lingyun battle court. Unfortunately, that place has been blocked. Maybe it's the work of the magic formation master you mentioned." "Retreat. Don't leave anyone there," Yin Nuoxing said. Xian and the others instantly understood that this fellow was going to open up a huge hole in the Kuan Yuan region again. He wanted the people from the Chu Jie to retreat in advance so that they wouldn't be accidentally injured. Under such an indiscriminate attack, even his own people wouldn't be spared. "Let's do it tonight. Prepare all your forces. We'll decide the outcome in a short time," Yin Nuoxing said. Everyone was confused. Even Chu Shan didn't know what to do. Someone couldn't help but ask, "Sneak attack? Sneak attack at night?" Of course not. With that magic formation master around, all kinds of sneak attacks are useless. Instead, we'll fall into the enemy's territory and fall into a disadvantageous situation. Oh, right. As Yin Nuoxing spoke, she thought of something. She grabbed the feather pen and pondered for a while. Then, She drew another circle between the Lingyun battle court's army and the Tsang Emperor city. This circle was closer to the Tsang Emperor city. Here, you can set up magic formations and traps here. Just in case, don't make too big of a commotion. It won't be good if we disturb the enemy. Chu Shun touched his chin and pondered for a while. He said, "You want to lure them out and defeat them one by one?" No. It's very troublesome to explain. Anyway, tonight, Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and was stunned for a moment. She looked at Chu Shun and said seriously, "Let me ask you in advance. If the 13 God Emperors are weakened by 60%, can you deal with them?" Everyone was at a loss again. This guy spoke in chunks, and at this time, he said something that no one could understand. Will it work? 13 God Emperors with 40% of their strength. Can't you kill them with a few thousand people? Yin Nuoxing urged them to come back to their senses. Chu Xin thought for a while and nodded. He said, "If they are only at 40% of their strength, then the Battle Spirit King and the other God Emperors are not a threat. We can deal with them." The others nodded. If the 13 God Emperors were only at 40% of their strength, they would definitely be beaten to death. However, then let's do it this way. Knowing what everyone was thinking, Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and didn't explain. She smiled and said, "Tonight, when the 2 moons are in the sky, it will be time to act." Chapter 967. In the conference hall, after Yin Nuoxing said those words, he walked towards the door in a confident and at ease manner. Ziyin and the others hurriedly followed after him. However, Chu Yingxian stayed behind. She still had some things to say. Before Yin Nuoxing and the others left, she had already said that they would go to her place first. After Yin Nuoxing and his group slowly left, everyone regained their senses. They looked at each other and frowned. If it wasn't for the fact that she was a girl and seemed to be acquainted with Chu Shun, someone would have chased her out a long time ago. Chu Shun, can this person's words be trusted? If the other party really mobilized so many forces, I'm afraid it would be difficult for us to resist. Someone couldn't help but ask. No matter how true Yin Nuoxing's words were, he was still just a demigod. It was normal for people to not believe his words. Moreover, many people treated him as a girl. That's a great god that I invited with great difficulty. This time, he gave me face and didn't mention any requests or fees. I beg you, please don't say such insulting words in front of him. If you anger him and make him leave, I'll cry for you to see. Chu Yingxian exploded in an instant. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Everyone present was quite familiar with Chu Yingxian. After all, she was the eldest princess of the Chu clan. She was a little devil who caused trouble in the Chu clan's Azure Emperor city all day long. It was impossible for them not to be familiar with her. Niece Yingxian, this isn't a question of whether to invite him or not. Besides, what can he do when he's only a demigod? A middle-aged man frowned and couldn't help but ask, "If you dare to say it in front of him, I'll pull out all the flowers in your house tomorrow." Chu Yingxian gnashed her teeth. That man's entire body trembled. His cheeks trembled as he shook his head with a bitter smile. All right. I won't say it in front of him. Then why don't you tell us who that little girl is?" Uffed. Chu Yingxian had just drank a mouthful of water. At this moment, she was so shocked that she spat it out. Her charming face trembled as she couldn't help but sigh. Didn't you guys sense his aura? He's a man. At this moment, everyone in the conference hall burst into laughter. His background is a little complicated, and he doesn't allow me to reveal it. With his status, a casual word from him could change the entire Kuan Yuan region tomorrow. It's because he's worried about this that he chose to do it himself. You don't have to worry about anything. Just listen to him and gather all our forces tonight. I have a rough idea of what that lunatic wants to do. Grumbling, Chu Yingxian patted Chu Shun's shoulder and said, "I'm leaving first. If I don't go back, those guys will tear my house down." After she finished speaking, her delicate figure flashed and disappeared from the spot, leaving behind a group of people staring at each other. "Third brother, what do you think? You make a decision. I'm a little confused now." Chu Yang's second brother walked forward with a wry smile, patted his younger brother's shoulder, and asked. Everyone nodded in agreement. It was still up to Chu Shan to decide what to do. If he nodded, everyone would be ready tonight. If he shook his head, they would just wait for the fight to the death 2 days later. From the looks of it, they would have to fight eventually. This battle was unavoidable. Chu Xin's heart was also in a mess. Chu Yingxian didn't reveal Yin Nuoxing's identity, but he at least knew that guy's superficial identity. Based on what he had done in the past, it was possible that he could really lead them to reverse the situation. This might be an opportunity. Chu Yingxian was very clear about Yin Nuoxing's power, so she was very relieved. However, if she didn't say it, no one would know. Moreover, if she just said it, no one would believe her, so she was too lazy to say it. This caused the situation to be a little awkward. On one hand, Chu Xun believed that his daughter wouldn't act recklessly at this critical moment. He also believed that the words spiritual divine body could bring about a miracle. However, this was a matter of life and death for the entire music world, so he didn't dare to gamble. Scratching his black hair, Chu Xun sighed and looked at the old man who had been sitting at the side without saying a word. He said, "Old man, what do you think?" The old man in a white robe suddenly became the focus of attention. Everyone looked at him. From the beginning to the end, he hadn't said a word. Now that he was called by Chu Xun, he opened his pale eyes and glanced at the map. After pondering for a long time, he raised his head and looked at Chu Xun. He said, "Follow your heart and choose." "I can't see through that child." Chu Xun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This ball was kicked to him again, which made him very confused. After hesitating for a long time, a touch of determination flashed across his eyes. He took a deep breath and nodded. He said, "Tonight, let's prepare." Everyone also relaxed. Then, their expressions became serious. They looked at each other and nodded. It was decided. "Then, let's start preparing now. Let's see what kind of miracle that little guy can bring to them." After giving some orders, Chu Xun gave some instructions to his second brother and third uncle. In a flash, he left the place. Chu Zhangping also left with him. In Chu Yingxian's small palace, a group of people were lying on the sofa. Their faces were full of laziness, and there was no sense of nervousness about the upcoming battle. Chu Yingxian looked at this group of lazy people and sighed heavily. "Can't you be more serious? What's there to be serious about? You should not care about your appearance at home and be more casual," Yin Nuoxing said lazily. Chu Yingxian was furious. "This is my home." "I didn't say it was my home. I don't have a home," Yin Nuoxing snorted. Her body tilted, and she rested her head on Xian's soft thighs. She let out a long sigh of relief. That unintentional sentence made everyone's expression freeze. They looked at each other. Chu Yingxian also shut up. Her expression was a little unnatural. She felt that she had said something wrong. Only Chu Chun and Chu Xianling were still a little confused. However, they felt that the atmosphere was a little strange, so they didn't say anything. They just kept quiet. Now that he thought about it, other than Yin Nuoxing, Ming, Little Purple Soul, and Bing Air, everyone else had a place that was like home. Only the four of them. The three little girls treated Yin Nuoxing's place as their home. The person closest to them in their lives was him, but he himself. Chu Yingxian quickly shook her head and said, "What do you plan to do? Blow up the area that you've encircled?" Yin Nuoxing straightened up, glanced at her, and said lazily, "Haven't you already guessed it?" Then her body tilted again. This time, she rested her head on Ming's thighs. She even snuggled a little, making the angel girl blush. All right. I knew it. Then what are you doing now? You've made the entire music world busy with just one sentence. Do you need to prepare anything in advance? Chu Yingxian waved her hand in annoyance. She pushed Chu Xianling to the side and sat down next to her. She looked at Yin Nuoxing, who was squinting her eyes and breathing weakly. "Oh, for the night, to accumulate strength to rest," Yin Nuoxing murmured. She seemed to be about to fall asleep. Chu Yingxian's expression became very funny. After a long time, she glared at him. Just as she was about to open her mouth to say something, Ming raised a finger in front of her red lips and shushed her softly. "Chill. Big brother is asleep." Xian quickly took out a thin blanket from her space storage device and covered him with it. And Little Moon hurriedly removed Little Magic and Xiao Xian from his body and moved his legs to the sofa. Bing Air quickly released cold air to lower the temperature in the room. Yin Nuoxing liked cool temperatures. Chu Yingzhan stared blankly at the girl's coordinated actions. Her eyes were dull. You're all used to this. Used to it, right? Yes. Little Star started from the moment he retrieved a small part of Feng Yueying's memories. That eternal nightmare followed. From then on, he could no longer sleep. If he wanted to sleep, he had to have fairy or divine power by his side, which is our power. It's very rare for him to be able to rest. Although he used the Thousand Dreams Sutra to enter a non-sleep state, he occasionally fell asleep. We want him to have a good sleep. Xian nodded. Chu Yingzhan was speechless. She felt a toothache. You two should hurry up and get married. Xian's pretty face turned red. This Little Star doesn't seem to have that intention. At this point, everyone sighed. She wanted this guy to get married? They would probably have to tie him up and forcefully send him over. Light flickered in the air, causing everyone to look over. Then, they saw Chu Yong and the cold woman appear. However, as soon as they arrived, the coldness on Chu Zhongping's face quickly melted. Chu Yong wanted to say something, but when he saw the person sleeping on the sofa, he was stunned. He subconsciously lowered his voice. Did we come at the wrong time? Ming thought for a moment. She reached out her hand and waved it beside Yin Nuoxing's ear, covering it with a soundproof barrier. Then, she looked up and said, "You can speak now." Chu Yong smiled bitterly and shook his head. "No, I wanted to ask this little guy what he planned to do tonight and if he needed any help. But seeing that he was asleep, I didn't want to disturb him." Chu Yingzhan thought for a moment. "Dad, take out some nourishing things. This guy will be very weak after he finishes cultivating." Hearing this, Chu Yong was stunned. Just as he was about to nod, he saw her pretending to be fierce. It was as if she would pounce on him and bite him if he shook his head. He couldn't help but smile and nod. "Don't worry. Dad isn't such a stingy person. If this little guy really has the ability to help, I'll give him everything I have. Money is just a worldly possession. What's the use of it if it can't protect you?" TCH, Chu Yingzhan curled her lips. She didn't feel touched at all. She even rolled her eyes at him. "I forgot that this fool has a lot of good things on him. I don't think he'll like anything in our family." Chu Yang's face was bitter. He sniffed and lamented. "Chongping, why does Xiener dislike me so much now? You don't want Dad anymore after having a little lover. Wah, you could talk nonsense, but you can't eat nonsense. This bastard idiot has nothing to do with me." Chu Yingzhan's beautiful face flushed red. She spoke incoherently and fiercely jumped up. Baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, she pounced towards Chu Yiyang. The latter happily caught this little kitten whose fur had exploded. Seeing the father and son suddenly playing around, Chu Zhongping sighed helplessly. "You two can also relax so quickly. There's no use in being nervous. When something is about to happen, if you can't change anything, it's better to calmly welcome it." Ming's lily-white hand gently stroked Yin Nuoxing's colorful hair. Her soft voice was heard. The golden Mei Mao turned and added, "Brother said so." Everyone chuckled. This sentence was really his style. Chu Yang hugged his daughter, who was acting spoiled, in his arms. He sighed in his heart. Yes, there was nothing to worry about. What he could do was already the limit. It was originally a dead end. Now he was just gambling. He was gambling on a possible future. Maybe that little guy could lead them out of this dead end. I've always felt that declaring war is not bad from a strategic point of view. Once we declare war, as long as the other party resists, we can basically wipe them out in one fell swoop. But from a fundamental point of view, not only does it give the enemy time to prepare, it also gives the enemy time to react. This increases the possibility of problems occurring. What if the other party doesn't resist and directly leaves? Night. This place was a mountain range outside the Azure Emperor's city. At the peak of the mountain, this mountain peak was sliced horizontally by a saber. The surface of the cut was smooth, and there was an additional platform. It was an extremely huge platform. It wouldn't be a problem for tens of thousands of people to sit on it. At this moment, there were thousands of people gathered here. From their auras, they were all mid-stage and high-stage deities. The blue and red moon slowly moved towards the peak. In this season, the moon couldn't reach the peak. That sentence was merely describing the time. The mysterious purple moonlight illuminated the entire world, illuminating a group of people at the very front of the platform. One of them had colorful hair that fluttered in the wind. It was Yin Nuashing. He looked very spirited. His eyes were shining brightly. Under the moonlight, he appeared even more mysterious. Reputation is all a lie. I'm a person who values life above all else. I can't be bothered with reputation. If there's anyone who disagrees with me, I'll just send them flying with a punch. If I can't defeat them after declaring war, I'll just run away. In this world, survival is the way of the king. Well, although I say so, sometimes I have to give up my life for certain things. Chu Yingxian glanced at him and said indifferently, "Aren't you talking nonsense?" But some people don't think so. I'm just flirting. No matter what, once the matter starts, there won't be time for flirting. After the Yin-Yang world, I've only rested for a few days. After this matter, if I don't sleep in for a few days, I'll be letting myself down. Yin Nuashing stretched his body and heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone rolled their eyes at him in annoyance. "Uncle Chu, are you sure that everyone has retreated? Is there really no one in that area?" Yin Nuashing tilted his head and looked at Chu Yiyang. "No problem. By the way, we're also prepared. If something happens, the 6 Emperor gods will be able to support us for a while." Chu Xin smiled at him. Yin Nuashing nodded. His colorful eyes reflected a blue light in the void. Chu Yingxian almost drooled when she saw it. The eye of the ocean, she really wanted one. The Ling Yun Battle Courts team hasn't made any moves. The straight line distance is about 80,000 miles. If an Emperor God moves at full speed, they can come over in the blink of an eye. It's equivalent to close combat. Unfortunately, the attack range of an ordinary Emperor God is not so large. No matter how close combat they are, they have to fly over this distance to use their attack. Yin Nuashing mumbled. Then, he chuckled and said, "The distance is long enough. If we get any closer, we might be affected. When do we make our move?" Emperor God looked at Chu Shun and asked, "Wait, when a moon is at the top of the sky and the power of the stars is at its strongest, the moment when it can touch the earth." Yin Nuashing pointed at the 2 gigantic moons in the sky and chuckled. Everyone raised their heads and muttered to themselves, "The power of the stars?" Yin Nuashing knelt on the ground, his colorful long hair spread out on the ground, flickering with sparkling starlight. When the power of the stars overflowed, he was like a firefly, releasing a bright light in the night sky. Moreover, it was the bright light of the stars, the light that shone on the god realm from billions of years ago, and the purple moonlight sprinkled on his body, making him look very mysterious. In this quiet night, no one thought about the battle that might happen in the next second. They just wanted to take advantage of the current situation to enjoy a little more peace. Xian and the others were also adjusting their condition. They might need to use their strength later. Although their strength was insignificant in such a battle, as long as Yin Nuashing asked for it, they would do their best to contribute their strength. A gentle breeze, moonlight, the Azure Emperor city could be faintly seen in the distance. The lights in the city flickered as the night sky became brighter and brighter. The night was mesmerizing. One could feel the flow of time. This tranquil time only lasted for a short 2 hours. When the 2 moons hung high up in the sky, Yin Nuashing's body flickered with astral light. That pair of colorful eyes that had been closed for 2 hours slowly opened as a soft voice rang out. Void enchantment locked down. Purplish-black runes drilled out from the cracks in space, connecting together. There was no sound when space was shattered. Numerous cracks appeared as the purplish-black runes unceasingly gushed out, forming a circle around the mountain peak. After that, the purplish-black runes silently sealed the space. This was the power of the void. It blocked all probing and probing from the outside world. It's time. Glancing at the sparkling astral energy on his body, Yin Nuashing glanced at the other parts of his body. The divine inscriptions on his body all emitted a bright radiance, as though they had sensed his next move. A boundless surge of energy flowed through the heavens and earth. He could clearly feel the throbbing of the energy. Has it begun? Seeing Qin Wentian standing up, Chu Shun and the others slowly turned their gazes over as they drew in a deep breath. Let's see how big of a surprise this little fellow would bring them. Xian and the others glanced at each other before nodding. After that, they hurriedly retreated. One of them carried Little Magic and Little Immortal, while the other carried Little Moon and Yuer as they turned and ran. It wasn't fun to watch that fellow unleash his full strength. With a wave of his hand, Yin Nuoxing took out the sun god bow. He lowered his head and stared at the 8-meter-long bow, as he couldn't help but laugh. "Buddy, I'll be depending on you today." Buzz buzz. The sun god bow flashed twice, as if it had a mind of its own as a response. This made Yin Nuoxing a little surprised. Although the sun god bow was a divine, level 9 divine artifact, it hadn't reached the level of having a mind of its own. However, after thinking about it carefully, he understood. The sun god bow had been brewing in his body for a long time, and its grade had unintentionally increased a little. Now that he could sense it, it was almost at the level of a level 10 eternal divine artifact. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath as his body floated into the air. He took off the soul-stabilizing bracelet and floated beside him. His long hair spread out and fluttered even though there was no wind. External energy circuit open. Not all weapons had this kind of external energy circuit. This kind of method was similar to a rare secret technique, and not many people knew about it. However, Yin Nuoxing felt lucky that all the weapons he had this kind of external energy circuit. It was a small design that allowed the divine artifact to borrow the external power of the world to unleash its original power. However, this would overload the divine artifact, and it couldn't be used again for a period of time after it was used. It could only be used with its own power, and it couldn't be used with its full power. Otherwise, it would destroy the divine artifact, and the power of the divine artifact itself would be affected. However, this time, he wanted to open both types of energy circuits at the same time. That was to say, when he opened the external energy circuit, he would also pour all his energy into it. It was as if he was toying with the divine artifact to death. The attack range of the Netherworld Ruins sword wasn't enough. Large-scale energy attacks like magic circles would be noticed by the Magic Circle Grandmaster the moment they gathered energy. If he let him defend with all his strength, it would consume part of his power, and then the result wouldn't be what he wanted to see. Only the sun god, Bao, could kill the enemy from tens of thousands of miles away without leaving a trace. Full power, release. Boom! The soul anchoring bracelet shattered in an instant. The energy that had accumulated for countless days was completely released at this moment, all of it surging into the sun god Bao. Yin Nuoxing roared, and all of the energy in his body surged out like an ocean. The violent power of the stars condensed into giant stars outside his body, orbiting around him in an orderly manner. In the sky, thousands of stars converged, as if the Milky Way was falling. The brilliant silver light illuminated his tall body, making his starry eyes shine even more brilliantly. His 6 wings spread out, spanning 100 feet. All of the energy in the world seemed to be sucked in by a black hole, constantly falling towards him. The violent transfer of energy created a violent energy storm in the world. The flickering starlight formed thousands of illusory stars, revolving around the giant energy vortex in the air. The violent energy swept across the sky, tearing open a 1,000-foot-wide spatial crack. The power of the space that came out of the crack suddenly paused, then was sucked in by the chaotic energy vortex in an instant. There was a Taotai beast that devoured energy, and all of the energy in the world couldn't escape. Rumble. The trembling of the space made everyone's expression tremble. Their slightly dazed faces recovered, and when they saw the violent scene, they were stunned again. In the name of Yin Nuoxing, the divine body that receives souls, a voice came out of the energy vortex. It reverberated in the space, and it was full of unconcealable majesty. A roar of the world gradually appeared. The moment the voice fell, the night sky suddenly collapsed, and the void boundary fluctuated. The power of the world, the elemental power, the power of space, the power of time, the power of the rules, the power of the stars, and even the power of the primordial realm. All of the energy that could be used surged madly in that direction. Under the guidance of the crazy energy, the space formed an energy vacuum. It was almost sucked dry. Everyone even felt that the energy in their bodies was about to burst out of their bodies. They hurriedly controlled the boiling energy in their bodies and stared blankly at the person floating in the air. Damn it! Is this the aura of a demigod? They must be dreaming. It's coming, it's coming. While everyone was stunned, only Chu Yingzhan's face was flushed red, and Mei Mao was smiling. She was smiling very happily, as if the person who looked like a god or a demon was her. Chapter 968. The sun, the moon, and the stars appeared at the same time. 2 moons and a sun appeared in the sky. The blazing red sun and the light purple flames were like world-destroying flames that burned wildly in this world. Thousands of pillars of starlight flooded this place. Huge arrays appeared from the void. They were arranged in a disorderly manner and were crooked from side to side. However, the center of each array was pointing directly at Yun Nuashing. A buzzing sound made this violent space even more violent. 10 arrays of different colors appeared behind Yun Nuashing. The golden metal element, the green wood element, the blue water element, and the dark element in the center. The 10 arrays hung behind Yun Nuashing. The black array was directly behind Yun Nuashing, while the other 9 were slowly revolving around his dark element array. All the elements in this world had already gone out of control. The balance of the elements was broken, and they were being controlled to drill into the elemental arrays. Yun Nuashing let out a low growl. 2 sharp teeth were exposed from his tightly pursed lips. The fingernails on his fingers and hands that were holding the bowstring became long and thin. Blue-white hair began to grow from his palms and spread all the way to his forearms. Crimson-red feathers grew from his shoulders. The 6 huge, dazzling wings on his back were also wrapped by 6 transparent ice-blue wings. Boom! The brilliant moonlight descended. An icy storm swept over from the 2 extremes of the realm of the gods. It caused ice and fire to burn in this place. Countless energies rose and fell. Dong! The ancient and grand sound of the bell seemed to have been passed down from the ancient mythological era. It had a heavy meaning that crushed the entire era and destroyed the void. Dong! The grand and distant sound of the bell continued to resound. It rang in everyone's heart and the entire void. It wanted the entire world to hear the sound of the giant bell. On the sun god bow, a dazzling pattern lit up, and an immeasurable amount of energy poured into it like an ocean. However, its capacity seemed to have reached limitless at this moment, and it crazily swallowed all the energy that rushed in. That chaotic and terrifying energy began to converge, and slowly, a long arrow appeared on the bowstring held by Yun Nuashing. The colorful arrow didn't seem to be in the form of energy, nor was it in the form of a crystal. It seemed to be a solid, colorful arrow. The turbulent energy on it caused cracks to appear in the space. Wherever the arrow pointed, the space shattered and split into 2. Cracks also appeared in the barrier of time. Even the barrier in the void trembled slightly. The infusion of endless energy made the divine arrow even more resplendent, and its body even more solid. It was no longer a body of energy, and just its existence alone was enough to distort the surrounding space. Even the laws of the realm of the gods could not help but tremble. This energy had been compressed tens of thousands of times, and it was as if the entire mountain range had been compressed to the size of a grain of sand. This arrow had reached a level where it could penetrate the laws of nature. Soul burning art, 72 times burn. Burn this soul. The moment the scarlet runes appeared on Yun Nuashing's body, the expressions of all the high-level gods present changed. This uncontrollable energy, this is impossible. How can he control it? With Yun Nuashing as the center, circles of energy waves came closer and closer to him. With Yun Nuashing as the center, they pressed down on him continuously. The pressure made the high-level gods look grave. The energy was so chaotic that it made the heavens and the earth lose its color. The experts of the Emperor gods present gasped. At that moment, they had all retreated a long distance due to the commotion caused by Yin Nuo Xing unleashing his full power. They could only watch as the brilliant sea of light occupied their line of sight. In the center of the sea of light, there was a person holding a longbow. This is the level he can reach? No wonder you have so much confidence in him. Chu Shen couldn't help but say as he looked at Chu Yingzhan with a drop of cold sweat on his forehead. Hearing this, Chu Yingzhan sneered and waved her hand. She said, "Dad, let me tell you, that guy hasn't risked his life yet. He hasn't unleashed his full power. He's a freak who can kill a god-level expert." At the mention of the legendary level, Chu Shen's eyes trembled. His deep gaze was fixed on Yin Nuoxing. When he saw that it was a ball of light, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Is that the 10 elements? The dark element is also there. What a freak. Huh? This time, Chu Yingzhan was also stunned. She looked at him in astonishment. Stupid dad, you know about the dark element? Of course, I told you about it. It's just that you didn't remember it. Chu Shen nodded. Chu Yingzhan came to a realization. No wonder she felt a sense of familiarity when he mentioned the dark element. It turned out that he had mentioned it before. After coming to a sudden realization, she panicked a little. She knew about the dark element and many secrets of the ancient times. She knew about those who possessed the dark element, and even knew about the Yun Nuo planet. Thinking of this, she grabbed Chu Shen's arm and said, "Father, you have to keep this a secret. You must. You have to swear." Chu Shen was stunned. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and nodded. No problem. About the dark element. I more or less understood it when I came into contact with it. Therefore, he knew why his daughter was so nervous. Seeing that he nodded, Chu Yingzhan heaved a sigh of relief. However, she was still worried. She pretended to be fierce and said, "You must keep it a secret. You must keep it a secret. If you leak it, I won't come back the next time I go out." Sure enough, you don't want your dad anymore now that you have a lover. Chu Shen laughed. How could he not see that his daughter was protecting Yin Nuoxing? No, Chu Yingzhan's face turned red. Just as she was about to explain, a huge movement suddenly came from the other side. She quickly turned her gaze. The world had lost its color. The night sky had turned pale white. It was as if even the colors had been swallowed by that place. The arrays had all collapsed and exhausted their energy. The last remaining energy was injected into the sun god Bao. The huge elemental energy gathered in the 10 arrays behind her suddenly surged into the sun god Bao. Like ice cubes being poured into boiling water, the boiling energy storm stabilized at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, everything calmed down. The violent energy suddenly calmed down. Everyone wiped off their cold sweat and came back to their senses. Their eyes were fixed on the 8-meter-long sun god Bao in Yin Nuoxing's hands. A colorful arrow was placed on the bowstring. Although it looked calmer than before, the concentration of energy had reached another level. Even the time barrier was on the verge of collapsing at the place where the arrow was pointed. Chu Yang's expression was extremely solemn. He could feel an irresistible force from the arrow. If the arrow was pointed at him, he knew that he wouldn't be able to block it. Even if there were 10 of him, it wouldn't be enough. This force was enough to kill an emperor god. Yin Nuoxing's colorful hair gradually turned white. Her colorful eyes were filled with ocean blue waves. Her gaze was fixed on the location of the Ling Yun battle court. After a while, she let out a long breath. Her right hand pulled the bowstring to the maximum with all her strength, forming an arc. Finally, she let go of the bowstring with a shout. Sun-piercing divine arrow. The moment the arrow left his hand, it exploded into several huge energy rings. Under everyone's horrified gazes, it rushed out of the void boundary. In a short moment's time, on the other side of the world, an extremely bright light suddenly blossomed. It was as dazzling as the sun rising from the east, illuminating the night sky with incomparable brightness. Dawn seemed to have arrived in advance. The violent energy ball poured out all of its energy in one breath, forming a massive energy storm that was over 10,000 miles wide. Moreover, it was still expanding. Boom! Boom! The earth-shattering explosion and earth-shaking tremors were delayed for a long time before they could be heard. At the same time, there was also an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation. Ding! A ringing sound came from the end of the world. Then, a monstrous energy, carrying the aura of annihilation, suddenly exploded in the distance at a speed far beyond the speed of light. The aurora of destruction dyed the world pale. Everyone felt as if the whole world was exploding, as if thousands of stars were being destroyed at the same time. The extremely brilliant light temporarily blinded everyone's eyes, almost blinding them. The weaker people's eyes turned red, and they screamed and fainted. They were affected by the impact of the energy just by looking at the place where it hit. Reverse change. Yin Nuoxing roared and his hands danced like lightning. Then, he clapped his hands together, and a clear sound suppressed the spread of the energy. Just when everyone thought that the energy explosion was over, the former waved his hands and drew an exaggerated arc in the air. Then, he let out a loud roar. Stars fall. The violent eruption of energy paused for a moment before converging toward the center at a speed that far exceeded the speed of light. The energy that had not been completely released also gathered together with a loud bang. All the aura of annihilation frantically converged and then condensed into a huge azure array on the ground. Within the array, the aura of stars filled the air, and it was so dense that it almost expelled the air. With a snap of a finger, a cross-shaped starlight suddenly appeared in the sky above the storm of destruction. An aura that made everyone tremble with fear descended from the sky. Everyone's hearts tightened as they looked up and saw the eternal light in the distance turn into an extremely pure azure light beam descending from the sky. The light beam of destruction that was tens of millions of feet in size carried a power that was enough to sink the sky and earth as it bombarded the earth. The power of the stars condensed on the light beam and exploded into rings of light that gradually expanded and pressed down on the ground. A terrifying shock wave that was like the destruction of stars also swept out from within and spread to the ends of the world at the speed of light. The earth rumbled and collapsed, creating a huge crater. With the expanding starlight beam as the center, the earth sank and disintegrated under the extremely pure energy. Space collapsed, and the time barrier was affected by the aftermath of the energy and collapsed. At this moment, the entire 10th province of the Kunyan continent, as well as the dozens of provinces around it, felt the tremors that shook the heavens and the earth. Edited by Lifer, Fingerfox, translated by Ciencia World, edited by Lifer, Fingerfox, translated by Ciencia World. The pillar of light rumbled for a minute, and its range almost extended to the mountain peak where Yin Nuoxing and the others were. In the end, due to the lack of energy, it gradually shrank until only a weak pillar of light was left. Then, with a poof, it extinguished. The pillar of light was extinguished, and only a huge pit was left on the ground in front of them. It covered an extremely large area, and not a single speck of dust flew up. Everything was melted by the extremely pure energy of the pillar of light, and nothing was left. The fracture at the edge of the abyss was a smooth and neat arc. Yin Nuoxing panted rapidly. She had exhausted all her energy, and there was not a single bit of energy left in her body. It was all squeezed out. The feeling of emptiness in her body was really uncomfortable. There was not a single part of her body that was not trembling. Even her vision began to blur and tremble. Boom! Suddenly, an aura surged out from afar. Anyone could feel that extremely violent aura. That person was like an erupting volcano, full of anger. However, underneath the fury, there was a sense of weakness. Yin Nuoxing panted for a while, and the color of her long hair faded away. She also felt that aura and could not help but roll her eyes. It was really not easy to kill a high-level god. It seemed that only the Netherworld Ruins sword could kill her in one go. The power of the star spell after that was determined by the strength of the first strike. It was just a second strike after the energy that had been released was forcefully reversed and condensed again. Next. I'll leave it to you guys. Yin Nuashing panted. Her legs gave way, and she was about to fall. Before she fell, a fragrant wind blew in her face. That holy light entered her dry body, and she felt herself being hugged by a soft body. She could not help but smile faintly. She closed her eyes and murmured in a dreamlike voice, "My mission is completed." Almost at the same moment he finished speaking, Chu Yang and the other god emperors suddenly shot out in a flash. The group of high-level gods also followed after them. They didn't have time to be shocked by the huge destructive power. At this moment, they wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to beat the dog that was down. Not long after, there were bursts of gorgeous energy storms in the distance. Roars that shook the 9 heavens could be faintly heard. The void collapsed, the star region dimmed, and the power of rules surged. A super battle at the level of god emperors had broken out. In the sky, destructive energy waves exploded. The earth-shattering movement startled countless people. They were already frightened by the 2 destructive waves. At this moment, they sensed that there were high-level gods fighting. They could not help but rush over curiously. They all turned into spectators. When they saw the 2 sides of the battle, they could not help but be shocked. Soaring Cloud Battle Court and Chu Jie. That's War Spirit King and Chu Jie. War Spirit King is going to be defeated. Damn it, I've already bought peanuts and melon seeds. Isn't the battle only tomorrow? The battle that was supposed to break out tomorrow suddenly broke out tonight. Looking at the situation, there were only 3 late-stage god emperors left in Soaring Cloud Battle Court. At this moment, their auras were weak. The power of rules and energy were constantly leaking out of their bodies. It was as if they were seriously injured and on the verge of death. These 2 giants, one of them was a veteran force, and the other was a newcomer. The difference in strength between the 2 was huge. However, from the looks of it, Chu Jie had an overwhelming victory. This was a fantasy. This result scared the spectators so much that they did not dare to speak. It seemed like Chu Jie also had a backup plan. Otherwise, how could the overlord of the 10th state, Soaring Cloud Battle Court, be in such a miserable state? Roar! Roar! War Spirit King gave his all and fought a bloody battle. However, he was already very tired. His entire body was filled with a dense star aura. It was like a maggot that nibbled at his body and wanted to melt him. He also had to resist Chu Jie's crazy killing techniques. In the end, he was gradually defeated by Chu Jie's fierce attacks. Chu Jie took the opportunity to grab his soul and burn it to ashes. His body that was covered in blood fell from the sky lifelessly. This result made the spectators shudder. This result was really out of everyone's expectations. They thought that Chu Jie would be defeated quickly. They did not expect this result. Cough. You are a scourge. We should not have been soft-hearted and let you grow. Those pedantic and stubborn old people did not agree to send high-level gods to eliminate you. In the end, you became a little dragon. Ah, the heavens are really going to destroy my Soaring Cloud Battle Court. The last remaining Emperor God was surrounded by a group of people. He covered his injured left arm and stared at Chu Yang with resentful eyes. He laughed bitterly. I only have myself to blame. From the beginning to the end, I did not provoke you. It was you who kept expanding the situation because of a little bit of resentment. Now it has reached this point. Chu Yang put his hands behind his back and looked at that person's life force that was constantly fading away. He said lightly, "We were just forced to fight back." That person laughed inexplicably. His whole body was trembling. Then, his eyes suddenly became fierce. He stared at Chu Jie and the others with a ferocious expression. I am not satisfied with today's defeat. This is definitely not an attack from you. None of the 6 of you can perform such an attack. No one. This, of course, was not performed by us. We asked the little guy to help us. Chu Jie smiled faintly and said, "To be honest, he also scared me. I did not expect him to be able to do this. It was too shocking. I was almost scared to death. Who? There is no harm in telling you. Since you're going to die anyway, I don't want you to die with regrets. Chu Jie smiled faintly and said, that little guy is called Yin Nuashing. He is the spiritual, godly physique of this era. He is a friend of my daughter. After that, the last great supreme god of Ling Yun battle court coughed out a mouthful of black blood. His eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. His body was trembling, and he was on the verge of death. Chu Yiyong waved his hand, and immediately, someone rushed forward and destroyed the great supreme god of Ling Yun battle court soul with a single palm strike. The great supreme god of Ling Yun battle court was dead. Up until now, the battle between Ling Yun battle court and Chu Jie had ended in such a comical and shocking manner. Zhanling Wang and Chu Jie had not expected that a little guy who was not related to them would be able to forcefully turn the situation around. The two attacks had hit him right in the heart. He had not felt this way for many years, and it made his heart palpitate. This time, we owe him a favor. An emperor god walked forward and looked at the bottomless abyss. His hands trembled slightly, and he quickly looked away. He could not help but sigh as he looked at Chu Jie. Chu Jie nodded and said, that little guy is truly amazing. Today, he has slaughtered more than 100,000 gods. It's nothing now, but the path after he reaches the initial god realm is not a small problem. If we don't handle it well, it will become a calamity. The person beside him started and instantly understood what he wanted to say. He smiled and nodded. There's a Heaven Harmony pill in the treasure pavilion. It can cleanse the negative effects caused by killing too many gods. If Realm Lord doesn't mind, I'll go get it and send it to little brother. Chu Jie coughed lightly and nodded. You can bring it to me. I'll send it over to him. Hearing this, that person laughed and clasped his hands. Chu Jie waved his hand and said softly to the others, now that the main force of the Ling Yun battle court has left, their headquarters should be defenseless. Although they just experienced a battle, they didn't expend too much energy. You all can go and take a look. However, be careful and don't be greedy and lose people. That little guy fought so hard to obtain a great victory for us. We have to cherish it. Everyone nodded. With a sway of their bodies, they flew towards the same direction. Chu Jie turned his head and looked in the direction of the Azure Emperor City as he slowly walked back there. In that case, I'll go back and check on the situation of that little guy. He seems to have expended quite a lot of energy. Chapter 969. Even the darkness of the night couldn't stop the news of the great victory of the Battle of Chu Jie from spreading out. In the middle of the night, the Azure Emperor City suddenly lit up with countless flames, giving off a feeling of the early evening. Just by looking at this scene, who would know that it was already late at night? The two earth-shattering explosions of energy startled everyone in the 10th prefecture of the Kuan Plains. It even affected the neighboring prefectures. The incomparably violent energy shockwaves swept across the horizon, tearing apart space. Anyone with a little bit of vigilance wouldn't pretend to be dead at this time. Therefore, the scene of the Battle Spirit King's death was witnessed by everyone. Chu Shun and Chu Jie's reputation would probably soar as well. No one could link it to the divine body, and no one knew that it was the work of the divine body, other than Chu Shun himself and his sister. However, there were also some meticulous people who understood the Chu Jie at the same time. They felt the unusual energy fluctuation and began to match it with the people of the Chu Jie, hoping to find the person who launched such a powerful attack. In the end, they realized that they couldn't match the person, so they could only helplessly attribute it to the trump card of the Chu Jie. In any case, this mysterious battle had an unprecedented scale. It had the most confusing process and the most unexpected ending. It became an interesting story to talk about after a meal. Or rather, it was a strange thing. In this world, there was a kind of existence called insiders. There were already more than 10 versions of the story made up by them. Each and every one of them was very convincing, almost making the people of the Chu Jie believe it. However, Chu Shun ordered them to keep their mouths shut and not spread it outside. The people of the Chujie could only suppress the urge to slap those who made up stories. As for the onlookers who didn't know the truth, many of them were fooled into believing it. The battle between the two forces was not over yet. The important forces of the Lingyun battle court had all fallen in one night. In the wee hours of the morning, those who wanted to go to the headquarters of the battle court gathered together. In the end, there was nothing left. Some people found traces of the battle between the divine emperors. They speculated that at least 3 divine emperors had fallen. As for who the 3 divine emperors were, they were not sure. As for Yun Nuoxing, who was not the main character in this matter, but contributed greatly, she was still lying in bed after a day had passed. Last night, she woke up for a while, but the weakness and drowsiness that came from her body made her fall asleep again in less than 5 minutes. Anyway, the recovery of the spiritual godly body was spontaneous. Given some time, she would be able to return to her peak state. Xian and the others could see that her long hair was gradually regaining its color, which made everyone heave a sigh of relief. This meant that at least she was not injured and was purely exhausted. Otherwise, her vitality would not have recovered so easily. It's been a day, and the little guy is still sleeping? In the hall of Chu Yingzhan's small palace, Chu Shun and Chu Zhongping sat on the sofa and sipped very fragrant tea. Chu Zhongping glanced at the second floor from time to time. They did not do anything else for the day. After the battle, the aftermath of the battle was left to his second brother and third uncle. He continued to be a hands-off boss. Anyway, this time, they did not lose a single person in the battlefield, so there was nothing special to be busy about. They just had to take over the territory of the Lingyun battle court and take inventory of the things they had collected from the Lingyun battle court. In the hall, Little Moon and Yu were running around with Little Purple Soul in their arms. Qin Yin and Bing Er looked at each other. The two had been motionless for 5 hours, like 2 statues. Nightmare pulled Chu Chen aside and bragged, talking about the past Yun Nuoxing. Chu Chan was so excited that his eyes were sparkling. Chu Xianling listened attentively at the side, without saying a word. Her sparkling eyes showed that she was very interested. Only Yuan, she sat alone in front of Chu Yiyang and Chu Zhongping, calmly drinking tea. You'll get used to it. That guy likes to injure himself all over and play with his life every day. However, he has a good physique and recovers quickly. Usually, he can be fully recovered after 2 or 3 days of rest. Yuan Shi poured tea for the two of them and took a sip himself. He sighed and said, I've gotten used to it. Chu Shen was a little speechless when he heard this. It was one thing for him to get used to playing with his life, but how could his companions get used to it? How much did that guy like to play with his life? However, the battle results that he obtained in exchange for his full strength were also quite frightening. As a demigod, he only used a divine bow that was comparable to a 10th level eternal divine weapon to wipe out the enemy. Out of 13 divine emperors, only 3 were left. Moreover, all of them were heavily injured. It was much more serious than what he had said at the beginning. They were not left with only 40% of their battle strength, but were hanging on by a thread. Chu Xianling listened to Nightmare talk about the past of Yun Nuoxing. From time to time, she would look in the direction of the second floor. After pondering for a while, she turned her gaze away. When Yuanqi saw this, he put down his teacup and said with a smile, If you're worried, why don't you go and take a look? Chu Xianling was taken aback. He hurriedly shook his head and said, Forget about me. Sister is also inside. There's also Sister Xian and Sister Ming. If you go and see him, he will appear nonchalant on the surface. However, he will still be quite happy on the inside. Little Star is very shy. If so many people see him in such a sorry state, he will feel embarrassed. That's why he's forcing a stiff expression, Yuanqi said softly. Chu Xianling fell silent. After a while, as though he was cheering himself on, he took a deep breath and nodded. He got up and walked to the second floor. Yuan Shi and Nightmare could not help but laugh sinisterly. When Little Moon saw this, she wrinkled her nose and reminded her softly, If brother finds out, he will beat you up. Then, let's just not let him know. Yuan Shi chuckled as he glanced at the second floor and saw Chu Xianling push open the door and walk in. Chu Chan suddenly said from his side. What about my aunt? Brother Yun is now. What happened? At the mention of Chu Zhangping, Chu Yang also came to his senses. He straightened his body and looked at Chu Chun, then at Chu Zhangping. Didn't the immortal fruit you brought back previously suppress the hidden danger? What happened? Brother Yin said that this suppression is only temporary. He has a way to completely resolve this matter. However, the methods that he mentioned previously were quite scary. Chu Chan shrunk his neck and quickly answered his father, telling him everything. When he finished, even Chu Shun could not help but tremble. He could not maintain his composure. These methods were akin to playing with one's life. This kid was good at playing with his life, but was he good at playing with other people's lives? Brother, it's fine. Little Yun said that he does not intend to use such dangerous methods. Chu Zhangping said softly as he pressed his hand gently. Then tell me, what method does he intend to use to help you resolve this problem? Chu Yang frowned. This matter concerned Chu Zhangping, so he had to be more careful. He was worried that Yun Nuoxing's methods would harm her. Devil Nightmare waved his hand and chuckled. Don't worry. After all, the boss is a heaven, spirit receiving godly body. Everything he knows about energy is not even comparable to a high-level god. He is a true master of energy. You can leave this problem to him. Well, I can roughly guess. Little Star said that he would resolve it while he was at it. I guess he wants to bring Miss Chu to a place, Yuanshi said as he supported his head with one hand. His eyes were shining. Oh, Nightmare raised his eyebrows. Is it there? That's right. Speaking of, by the way, it should be there. Yuanshi nodded. Oh, there. That thing is there. Maybe it has some special uses. What the two of them guessed was naturally the location of the Pillar of Genesis. Not only that, their guesses weren't wrong. This was the main purpose of Yun Nuoxing's visit to the Azure Emperor City. He merely wanted to help Chu Yingzhan settle the troubles of her clan and bring Chu Zhangping there to resolve this unprecedented phenomenon. Although I don't really understand what you're talking about. Chu Yang's frown gradually loosened. There shouldn't be a problem if you bring me along, right? I'm worried about Zhangping's condition. After speaking, he glared at Chu Zhangping. This lass had disappeared by herself some time ago, scaring the soul out of the people of the music world. Although he wasn't too worried about her, her condition wasn't good at all. Occasionally, she would even faint due to energy fluctuations. There are thousands of what-if situations when she ran away from home. However, he couldn't be bothered to teach this lass a lesson. Their entire family, from top to bottom, loved to run away without saying a word. If one of them disappeared one day, they could only stare blankly because they would never know where that person ran off to. Chu Zhangping shrunk her head and stuck out her tongue. Brother, you're usually busy. I can only go out by myself. Although her tone was calm, everyone could hear the hidden bitterness in her voice. It was as though she was complaining that her brother was too busy and neglected her sister. Chu Yang laughed dryly. Sigh, it's not fun to stay in the music world every day. I see that Xian is quite happy with little Yin. If this problem can be resolved, I will also go out with Xian to play. Chu Zhangping turned her head and flicked her long hair as she snorted. Chu Yang was speechless. He was so conflicted that his face was distorted. Looking at the siblings, Yuanshi spread his hands and said, Well, it shouldn't be a problem. It's just that this matter is of great importance. Well, if seniors can keep their mouths shut, Little Star probably won't mind. Or rather, he won't mind. In any case, you will only bring trouble to yourselves if you speak of it. Our whereabouts are unknown, and no one will be able to find us. Don't worry. We know what to say and what not to say. Chu Yang nodded. That's right. There's also the matter of the Immortal King Valley. Where is it? Boss also has to make a trip there and take away the Immortal King battle song. Nightmare looked at Chu Chan and said, The Immortal King Valley has one of the Immortal Emperor's 9 songs. The Immortal King battle song? Chu Yang was somewhat surprised. He had also been to that place before, but he didn't gain anything. It could only be said that he wasn't fated to do so. After all, the Immortal King Valley had existed for a very long time. Every year, many people would enter, but no one had gained anything special. At most, they would gain some enlightenment after hearing the shocking melody. Probably. After all, the name is a little coincidental. We don't know the specifics. It was Little Star and Chu Yingzhan who told us. Little Star speculated that it might be the Immortal King battle song. We will know when we go there. Yuanqi scratched his head. Chu Yang nodded. The Immortal King Valley is in the mountain range outside the Azure Emperor City. Oh, don't be so nervous. It's not the mountain range that was destroyed by that brat. It's the other side. Yuanqi's countenance changed. After that, he heaved a sigh of relief. He had a strange feeling in his heart. If the Immortal King Valley was really within the range of Yin Nuoxing's attack, what would he do if he knew about it? Maybe nothing would happen. At most, he would sigh at the fact that there was something missing in this world. After that, he would turn and leave. He didn't head to the Immortal King Valley with an absolute goal in mind. Everything would be up to fate. After quietly lying down for another day, Yin Nuoxing, who was sleeping, it was unknown whether it was because he had already recovered or because he was being stared at by the four beauties. In any case, he woke up early in the morning the next day. The moment he woke up, he saw Zian, Ming, Chu Yingzhan, and Chu Xianling all staring at him. Feeling a little dizzy, he abruptly lay back down. It must be because I woke up in the wrong way. After mumbling to himself, Yin Nuoxing let out a light roar as he sprang up. After that, he saw Zian and Ming walking over. Two pairs of Maimao looked at him and asked, "Are you feeling better?" It didn't seem to be an illusion. Yin Nuoxing bitterly laughed in his heart. Taking in a deep breath, he patted his face with both hands and nodded. After which, he frowned and shook his head. This caused the four beauties to be at a loss. Was he feeling better or not? "I'm fine." Seeing the worry in their eyes, Yin Nuoxing spoke in a light voice. After which, with a wave of his hand, he took out an 8-meter long piece of charcoal and placed it on the bed. At the two ends of the charcoal, there were two strings made from an unknown material. However, Zian soon discovered that something was wrong. This wasn't charcoal. This was the divine weapon he used that night. How did the sun god bow end up like this? Ming was startled. Her jade hands touched the body of the bow that had already turned into charcoal. Maimao trembled and said, "The overload of energy caused the divine weapon to go berserk. This is broken." Yin Nuoxing nodded and gently rubbed the black charcoal with his palm. There were even cracks in the middle of the charcoal. He had no doubt that with just a little bit of force, he could break it into a few pieces. That night, the external and internal energy circuits were activated together. In addition to the ability of the soul absorption godly body, I used 4 times the strength of the divine weapon. But how should I say this? Yin Nuoxing's eyelids drooped slightly, after which he could not help but chuckle. You are indeed a late-stage God Emperor. You were actually able to hurriedly put up a defense at the moment when the light element assassination came. At that time, at least 5 God Emperors used all their defenses. That was why they were not shot down by the arrow. Zian and the others' expressions changed slightly. Under such circumstances, there was actually someone who could react and put up a defense. After a while, Yin Nuoxing finally put away the broken sun god bow. He let out a light breath and said, "It seems that it will take some time to repair itself. In the future, it's better to be careful when using the external energy circuits of the divine weapon. Other than divine weapons, no other divine weapon can withstand 4 times the power of the divine weapon. This is determined by the material. The soul absorption godly body allowed the divine weapon in the body to slowly upgrade. It also allowed the material of the divine weapon to upgrade. Just as he thought before, it was a carrier for nurturing weapons. Perhaps because it had not completely upgraded, the power of the sun god bow was comparable to the 10th level. Its energy core seemed to have reached the 10th level. However, the material of the divine weapon itself was only between the 10th and the 9th level, which caused it to be damaged. If the Nether Void Sword had used such an attack, it would not have been damaged. The latter's material was very high, exceeding the 12th level. However, there were many problems with the core of the divine weapon and many other factors, which caused its grade to drop. Its power was also not as strong as before, which was the exact opposite of the sun god Bao. The upgrading of the material is much slower than the upgrading of the core. Well, it's normal. This is equivalent to cultivating a 9th level material to the 10th level. It's normal for the speed to be slow. It's already very heaven-defying to have such a function. No wonder the soul absorption godly body has been hunted down since ancient times. It's probably because of this reason, Yin Nuoxing said in his heart. After waking up, Chu Yingzhan did not look good. He quickly dragged his sister out of the room. Before closing the door, he looked at Yin Nuoxing, Xian, and Ming with a very ambiguous look. He laughed evilly and then closed the door. Did that girl eat something wrong? Yin Nuoxing watched the door close and rolled his eyes. After waking up, he tossed and turned for a while. The soul fixation bracelet was still brewing in his body, and it would take another day. It would take a total of 3 days for it to come out. In other words, the divine artifact he used to tie his hair was gone. His long hair scattered all over the bed. Yin Nuoxing was dumbfounded. Xian and Ming were also at a loss. The 3 of them were busy combing the colorful hair that was a little more than 10 feet long. They were a little flustered. Xian and Ming's hair was also very long. Usually, it reached their thighs. Even if they straightened it, it barely reached their knees, so it was not that difficult for them to comb it. However, Yin Nuoxing's hair was strangely long. Usually, it would reach her calves when tied with the soul fixation bracelet. Now it was spread out and dragged on the ground. The 3 of them were busy combing the hair for half an hour. Yin Nuoxing was basically making trouble. When the 2 girls were done, he waved his hand and messed up again. In the end, he was ordered by the angry Xian and Ming to stop moving. Only then did he obediently sit still. Then, the 2 girls thought for a while and came up with a solution. First, they rolled the hair into a ball at the back of their heads. Then, they tied the long hair that hung down with 2 ribbons. One was tied at the shoulder and the other was tied at the knee. The ball of hair in the middle bulged out. It's like 2 pieces of lotus root. Yin Nuoxing's eyes widened when he looked in the mirror. The hair by his ears was tied into 2 bunches by 2 purple ribbons. They hung down from his chest to his feet. The end of the hair on his back spread out like a flower. Forget it, forget it. I'll make do with it. Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he put away the mirror. He had a helpless expression on his face. I still don't know what the godly body will look like in the future. Did the godly bodies of the previous godly bodies also grow hair? How'd they deal with it? Xian and Ming shrugged cutely. Who knew? In short, he walked out of the hall with this appearance. When everyone saw him, they all spat out a mouthful of tea in unison. They were dumbfounded. Was this the most fashionable outfit nowadays? After hearing Yin Nuoxing's explanation, everyone let out a long oh. However, their eyes couldn't move away from the lotus root on his back. This was too funny. Moreover, it looked a little beautiful for some reason. Yin Nuoxing expressed his helplessness. The hair was dragging on his heels. He would kick it when he walked. If he stepped on it, he would probably fall flat on his face on the spot. The others found it comical, but Xiao Huan and Xiao Xian seemed to have discovered something. Their eyes lit up. The 2 little fellows jumped into the bundle of hair behind Yin Nuoxing and burrowed in. They even stuck their heads out to greet everyone. Then they shrank back. That place had become a hiding place for the 2 little fellows. Yin Nuoxing looked up and sighed. Why don't we lie down for another day? Chapter 970. As soon as she woke up, everyone wanted Yin Nuoxing to rest for a while instead of walking around with her long hair that could hide pets. However, the latter expressed that it did not matter if she rested or not. Since she woke up, it meant that she had rested enough and did not need to lie down anymore. Everyone asked, what about the truth? It's so boring to lie down. Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly. Everyone sighed. This answer was also within the range of their guesses. This guy had nails on his back. If he wasn't half dead, he wouldn't want to lie down. Moreover, once he lay down, he wouldn't get out of bed for a few days. There was nothing they could do about him. After resting for more than 10 minutes, Yin Nuoxing urged them to go out. She also wanted to bring Chu Zhangping along. After solving one problem, there was another one waiting to be solved. Since he had promised, he would not go back on his word. He did not want that crazy girl to make him mentally and physically exhausted. Chu Yang and the others expressed their desire to follow and take a look. Yin Nuoxing agreed without hesitation. After all, Chu Zhangping was their family. It was normal for them to have such worries. He did not care if the location of the Pillar of Creation was discovered. After all, only he had a way to bring people in. Even if others knew where that place was, they could not force their way in. Even heavenly gods were no exception. The group left the Curve Realm and followed Yin Nuoxing as they flew out of the city. They did not fly very far. In the mountains less than 100 miles away, they found their destination after searching for a while. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and opened up an energy barrier that enveloped everyone. Then, she led everyone into that place and disappeared. In another space, there was an unchanging blue sky and white clouds. The green mountains in the distance, the grasslands under their feet, and a deep blue lake water that looked like an ocean in front of them. In the distance, there was an incomparably huge black metal pillar that shone with a mysterious light. It went straight into the sky and probably into the starry sky. One look at it would give birth to an infinite sense of heaviness. Wow, what a huge pillar! Chu Chun could not help but exclaim. He gradually raised his head until he looked at the sky at a 90-degree angle. He could not see where the top of the pillar was even though he tried his best. Big Brother Yun, what is this? What is this? Chu Chun asked curiously as he jumped in front of Yin Nuoxing. His reaction reminded everyone of themselves when they saw the Pillar of Creation for the first time. They couldn't help but chuckle. When they saw the Pillar of Creation for the first time, they couldn't even close their mouths. Chu Yiyang and Chu Zhangping looked around the space in amazement. They could see the amazement and confusion in each other's eyes. They could not understand the way this space existed, and the pillar that connected to the sky gave them an extremely obscure ancient presence. It was an ancient and heavy presence that transcended time. It was as if this space had always been like this since ancient times and would never change. This is the Pillar of Creation. Yin Nuoxing looked at Chu Chun and smiled. Legend has it that it has been standing on this vast land since the birth of the realm of the gods. It is one of the most ancient and mysterious relics in the realm of the gods. Although it had existed since the birth of the realm of the gods, Yin Nuoxing didn't know much about it. However, he was certain that this thing had definitely existed before the primordial age. When he was still Quarter Moon, he was in charge of repairing the Pillar of Creation. At that time, he already knew a lot about it, although this broken pillar didn't pay much attention to him. And logically speaking, it shouldn't be able to pay attention to him. Anyway, it found him out of the blue and let him know about this miracle of miracles. Over the years, there were less than 100 people who knew about the existence of the Pillar of Creation other than the 9 sacred shrines. Among the 9 sacred shrines, only the absolute upper echelons knew about the location of the Pillar of Creation. This was also a mission that Quarter Moon left behind to repair the Pillar of Creation. At first, he didn't even think about it. Later on, he felt that it was too troublesome, so he passed the method of entering the location of the Pillar of Creation to the people in charge of the shrines. He let them work on it and search for all the pillars that existed in the realm of the gods. Now, Yin Nuoxing had drawn the Pillar of Creation according to his memory on the treasure map. An ancient and magnificent aura. Chu Yiyang took a deep breath and murmured, "It's like a relic from a myth. I feel an aura that is of the same origin as heaven and earth. This Pillar of Creation has an inseparable relationship with the realm of the gods, right?" Chu Zhangping couldn't help but ask as he looked at Yin Nuoxing's calm expression. Yin Nuoxing nodded. The Pillar of Creation protects the realm of the gods and maintains this world that's so huge that it's beyond common sense. If the Pillar of Creation collapses, the realm of the gods will also be destroyed. Seeing the shocked expressions of the 4 newcomers, Yin Nuoxing smiled helplessly and waved to Chu Zhangping. "There's plenty of time for you to be amazed. Come with me." As he spoke, he rushed towards the Pillar of Creation. Chu Zhangping also quickly came back to his senses and nodded to his brother. His figure flashed, and he quickly caught up. She brought Chu Zhangping to the place close to the pillar of creation. The surprise in her eyes was even more obvious. When they got close to the pillar of creation, they realized that it was a vertical black land that stretched straight to the sky. The land extended to both sides to the end of their line of sight. At the end, there was only a slight curve. This thing was so huge that they couldn't see the top at all and couldn't measure how high it was. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and motioned for her to stop. He walked in front of the pillar of creation and reached out his hand to touch it. He first dealt with the problems in the pillar of creation as usual. Buzz! A few minutes later, everyone saw a series of huge golden runes appear on the pillar of creation. Only when they stood close to it could they clearly see that each golden rune was tens of thousands of feet in size. However, from a distance, they looked like densely packed dots. As the runes flashed and appeared, the huge magic formation in the sky also appeared. The magic formation that encompassed the whole world was only a corner of the main body. Xian and the others were paying attention to it very clearly, but they still couldn't see the location of the heart of the protective magic formation. The protective magic formation that they saw here should be in the upper right corner. To be precise, it should be the one that encompassed the entire northeast of the Kuan-Yuan region. This is a magic formation? Chu Yang noticed this movement. He raised his head, but couldn't see the edge of the magic formation. He could only see incomparable patterns that were mysterious and incomprehensible. His eyes narrowed slightly. This was only a corner of the huge magic formation. How big is this magic formation? It's not that big. Yuan Shi waved his hand and said, it's only the size of the Kuan-Yuan region. Chu Chun and Chu Xianling gasped, and the corners of Chu Shun's eyes twitched. It's only the size of the Kuan-Yuan region. He had never heard of a magic formation that could encompass the entire region. This was beyond their understanding. Calm down. There are 4 more magic formations like this that cover the entire godly realm. The boss is controlling them. If he doesn't like this world one day, he can blow it up with a boom. Nightmare's words were so terrifying that even Chu Yingzhan couldn't stand it anymore. This guy had scared her younger siblings silly, and even her father looked unnatural. Don't listen to their nonsense. 80% of what they say can't be ignored. Chu Yingzhan glanced at the two in annoyance and sighed. That idiot is indeed controlling these magic formations. They're still being repaired. They're the guardian magic formations of the godly realm, and they won't be activated unless it's a matter of life and death. Hearing this, Chu Yang and the other two heaved sighs of relief. They were scared to death. They thought, however, in the primeval age, this thing annihilated 1,000 trillion people who invaded the godly realm. It's quite scary, right? Nightmare chuckled. Can you stop talking? Chu Yingzhan was exasperated. The 3 of them had just calmed down, and now their faces were pale again. It's not like you don't know his problem. He likes to spout nonsense to scare people. Yuan Shi shrugged helplessly. The golden runes flickered, and after a while, they gradually dimmed and turned into golden patterns that were imprinted on the pillar of creation. Seeing that the seal on the pillar was fine and wasn't damaged, Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that not all of the pillar of creation was damaged. After settling this matter, Yin Nuoxing waved at Chu Zhangping. The latter understood and obediently walked to his side, smiling. What should I do? Yin Nuoxing pondered for a while. She stretched her shoulders and took out a simple bronze lamp. The surface was covered in green, and some parts revealed a faint golden color. It was the soul calming lamp. Hold this and destroy your body. Yin Nuoxing stuffed the soul calming lamp into her arms. Chu Zhangping's expression changed slightly. Looking at the bronze lamp in her arms, she hesitated. Yin Nuoxing saw her hesitation and smiled. The soul calming lamp can protect your soul from being destroyed. Don't worry, there's no risk. If you can't bear to destroy your body, I'll help you burn it when your soul comes out. This is an eternal divine weapon? Chu Zhangping stared at him, straight into his colorful eyes. After seeing him nod, she was even more shocked. When she held the lamp in her hands, she felt that something was wrong with it. It made her soul feel a little piercing pain. As if sensing her hesitation, Yun Nuashing scratched her head in distress. Your problem is in your soul. It was originally a mistake in your body, but it affected your soul. Now, to turn your soul back to its normal state, you have to abandon your body first. I'll be here to watch. There's no risk, and there won't be any pain. Don't worry. If you mess it up, that crazy girl will eat me alive. Hearing this, Chu Zhangping smiled and nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. Yin Nuashi nodded. Her body trembled, and then a soul slowly floated out of her body. Not long after, the soul stood in front of her with the soul calming lamp. It turned out that the body had lost control and lost its power. Just as it was about to fall, Yin Nuashi caught it. Hold the soul calming lamp and enter the pillar of creation. Don't resist the power inside. It's the power of the origin formed by the fusion of 10 different elements. Slowly absorb it into your soul and let your soul change into an elemental state. Don't worry, it's just a form. You can change back to your normal state at any time. Other than leveling up your soul, it will also give you a special power. After you succeed, your affinity with the elements will greatly increase. Yin Nuashing said. Chu Zhangping nodded and was about to float towards the pillar of creation when Yin Nuashing looked at the body in her arms and hurriedly said, Wait, what about your body? Do you want to do it yourself, or do you want to do it? Chu Zhangping was stunned. She turned around and looked at the body in Yin Nuashing's arms. Her face blushed slightly. Mei Mao turned around and suddenly smiled mischievously. I'll leave it for you to play with. Yin Nuashing's heart skipped a beat, and his breathing became sluggish. He rolled his eyes, and, just as he was about to retort, she had already carried the soul-suppressing lamp into the pillar of creation, and he could also feel a slight change in the energy inside. Looking at the body in her arms, Yin Nuashing sighed in annoyance. Chu Zhangping was very beautiful and had a faint cold aura. She was a rare beauty that could topple cities. Furthermore, her original body had said something like that right in front of him. It made his heart skip a beat, and black lines appeared on his forehead. He had no interest in this kind of thing, nor did he have such vulgar thoughts. So naturally, he waved his hand, and the 5 divine flames surged forward and burned the body. The energy carrier was left behind. This was the result of a God-Emperor powerhouse's lifetime of cultivation. However, the energy inside was also very chaotic. Chu Zhangping did not need this energy carrier when she reconstructed her body. Everything about her was preserved in her soul. The reconstructed body would still be at the God Emperor level. It would just take some time to fill up her energy carrier. It could be used as a bomb. He tossed the gray energy carrier in his hand. It was as hard as a rock and was filled with chaotic energy. Once it left the container, the energy inside would become silent and calm. In the end, it would become a solid carrier without any ripples like a stagnant pool of water. His gaze turned to the pillar of creation. He could not see the situation inside, but he could feel the movement of energy inside. The pillar of creation was a very strange space. There was a seal layer in the innermost layer. That seal layer maintained the stability of the pillar of creation and the realm of the gods. Between the seal layer and the surface layer, there was a thick layer of energy. 60% of the space inside the pillar of creation was this layer of energy. Other than elemental energy, it also contained all the energy that could be born in the realm of the gods. Giving this opportunity to her is a little. I was going to give it to Xian. Yin Nuashing murmured in a low voice. He was also selfish. The pillar of creation gathered all the origin energy of the realm of the gods. It had been accumulating for countless years and had been settling down all this time. It was very precious. It even included the power of the world. It condensed into a very special energy and integrated it into one's body. It could allow one's understanding and control of the origin energy to reach the level of a god. He was not familiar with Chu Zhangping, so he was a little reluctant. After hesitating for a while, Yin Nuashing sighed helplessly. Forget it. I'll find another one for Xian and the others. If she can get it smoothly, it's also her opportunity. Let's not worry about it. It won't be too long. Just wait. Looking at the calm black pillar, Yun Nuoxing turned and rushed to where everyone was waiting. Oh, it's done? Seeing Yun Nuoxing suddenly appear in front of them, everyone was a little stunned. Yuanqi was lying on the ground and lazily greeted him. Looking around and not seeing Chu Zhangping, Chu Yang frowned slightly. Where's Zhangping? Inside the pillar of creation. It's going well. It won't be long before it's done. Yin Nuoxing said. After thinking about it, he did not tell them everything. He did not want to be asked one question after another. It would be troublesome to think of a good answer. It was better to just tell them the result. Chu Yang nodded and did not ask any more questions. He just quietly looked at the pillar of creation. There was a touch of anxiety in his eyes. His heart was not as calm as it looked on the surface. When Chu Yingzhan saw this, she reached out and patted him on the shoulder. Stupid father, don't worry. Nothing will happen when the dummy does things. And we'll be fine in a while. Although everyone heard her say so, in the next 2 hours, she herself was restless. Sometimes she would lie down, and sometimes she would jump up, pacing back and forth on the spot. Her face was calm, but her face was covered in cold sweat. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. It seemed that when it came to family matters, no matter how confident she was in him, she could not help but worry. In this regard, Yin Nuoxing had nothing to say. He bent his legs and sat on the ground. His hands hugged his knees as he looked at the pillar of creation in the distance. Ming called him for a while, but he did not respond. Brother, she could not help but reach out and shake his hand. Yin Nuoxing came back to his senses. His whole body trembled. He turned his head and saw Ming's slightly worried gaze. Yin Nuoxing smiled and stroked the girl's silver-white hair. He looked at the pillar of creation again. After a few minutes, he suddenly stood up and said, "It's a success." Everyone came back to their senses and stood up. Then, the space in front of them suddenly distorted and a graceful figure appeared. She was wearing a white robe, and there was a faint coldness on her face. She slowly opened her eyes. There were no ripples in her black eyes. After seeing Chu Yang, Chu Yingzhan, and the others, Mei Mao's eyes lit up slightly. Her red lips curled into a smile. She opened her mouth to say something, but her body went soft, and she knelt on the ground. Chu Chun and Chu Xianling saw this, and quickly rushed forward to help her up. What's wrong? Didn't we agree? Chu Yang also quickly went forward to help Chu Zhangping and asked in confusion. My newly recovered soul and body are a little uncoordinated. I can't control it well. Chu Zhangping stuck out her tongue and giggled as she supported the two of them to stand up. After using some time to control her new soul and body, Chu Zhangping walked lightly to Yin Nuoxing. She waved her hand, and something appeared in her palm. She handed it to Yin Nuoxing and said, "I have something for you. I found it in the pillar of creation." Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Everyone also came over curiously. The thing that Chu Yingzhan brought out was a transparent ball of light. In the ball of light, there was a blue gourd. Everyone was stunned and looked at Yin Nuoxing. Since it was something found in the pillar of creation, he must know about it. In fact, Yin Nuoxing was also confused. It's not the world's origin. I thought you were really lucky to get it. What is this thing? After saying that, everyone was even more confused. Yin Nuoxing took it and held the transparent ball of light in her hand. She looked at it for a while and put her ear to it to listen. Unexpectedly, she heard some strange sounds. Woo, rumble, ding, yin and at, percent. Meaningless sounds came from the transparent ball of light like static. Yin Nuoxing's frown deepened. Taking a closer look, this thing looked like a blue ball of light that was squeezed in the middle. There was no gourd head. Was it related to the realm of the gods? It was in the pillar of creation. It wasn't that he had never entered that space, but he didn't find anything strange in it back then. Everyone looked at Yin Nuoxing, who was struggling with the thing in her hand. Dozens of faces were wrinkled like bitter gourds. A few minutes later, Yin Nuoxing suddenly raised her head. Her face was full of shock and astonishment. Her expression shocked everyone. Don't tell me this is... Yin Nuoxing shuddered violently, as if he had thought of something terrifying. He suddenly got into a horse stance, shouted loudly, and waved his hand fiercely, gathering the light elements. F***CKU. After a shout, she threw the transparent ball of light at the pillar of creation with all her strength. Everyone was dumbfounded. After taking 2 breaths, Yin Nuoxing wiped the sweat off her face. She wasn't worried that the pillar of creation would be damaged. Since this thing came out of the pillar of creation, it would go back inside. But that thing... Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath. She had a complicated look in her eyes. She didn't expect that after so many things had happened in the realm of the gods, so much turmoil, and so many things had almost torn the world apart, the pillar of creation was still connected to the entire realm of the gods. It maintained the existence of the realm of the gods and controlled the lifeline of the realm of the gods. Perhaps this was the reason why it appeared inside. Seeing her extremely serious expression, everyone was curious. Chuchen wanted to ask, but he was held back by Chu Yingjian. She also knew that some things couldn't be asked. Looking at the silly girl's expression, she knew that it wasn't something simple. He probably wouldn't tell her even if she asked. Did I cause trouble? In the end, it was Chu Zhangping who spoke. She asked Yin Nuoxing carefully. After all, she was the one who brought this thing out. If she caused trouble, she would feel bad. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing shook her head and said, "No, that thing. Oh, it's better if that thing doesn't appear in this world." After saying that, she looked at Chu Zhangping and smiled. "Well, thanks to you, I found out that this thing actually exists in the realm of the gods." Although it was vague, Chu Zhangping could tell that he didn't blame her. She couldn't help but smile. Chapter 971. The Immortal King Valley is not far from here. We'll reach it in a few minutes if we fly in that direction. Chu Yang pointed in a direction and said. After the group left the place where the Pillar of Creation was, Yin Nuoxing suggested that they go to the Immortal King Valley. He knew that the Immortal King Valley was in this direction. If they traveled at the speed of light, they could reach it in a flash. They could just fly over it. "By the way, Uncle Chu, how's the pit?" Before leaving, Yin Nuoxing asked. Chu Yang heard this and thought about the reports of the other emperor gods in the Chu domain. He shook his head and said, "That pit is occupied by too pure energy. The land there has been melted, and the power of the natural order has lost its effect. It's probably impossible to fill it up." Yin Nuoxing narrowed his eyes and hesitated for a while before nodding. He had mentioned this to Chu Yang in advance before that night. He wanted him to help restore the land after the war. He did not expect that the power of the natural order of the emperor gods would be useless in front of that power. "Pit, when did you guys discuss this?" Chu Yingjian said with a blank face. "What's wrong with that pit? Dummy, are you finally planning to solve the big problem left behind after the war?" Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and said, "I have such plans, but it won't work. The power of the natural order of this world has dropped to a very low level. Heaven, oh, the power of the stars will cause irreversible damage to the realm of the gods. That time in the Ghost Forest, that time in the Divine Tiger Mountain Villa, and this time it can't be repaired." In the end, he said in the minds of Xian and Chu Yingjian, the attack of Starfall is equivalent to a concept attack of the heavenly god level. It uses the endless power of the stars and the power of the natural order of the realm of the gods. The damage caused can't be repaired with the current power of the natural order of the realm of the gods. The expressions of Yuan Shi and the others changed slightly, and they looked at each other. Now, they also had a certain understanding of concept strike. Those who had advanced to the initial god level would have a certain understanding of it, but it was still too early. They would be able to truly understand what concept strike was when they advanced to the god level. Not noticing what the little guys were thinking, Chu Yang nodded at his sister. Then, he looked at Chu Xianling and Chu Chun and said, "We'll go back first." "Do you guys plan to?" Chu Chun immediately answered, "Of course I'm going to join in the fun. Doesn't the Immortal Emperor's 9 melodies sound very impressive?" "Do you know what the Immortal Emperor's 9 melodies are?" Chu Xianling sighed and looked at him silently. This guy just wanted to join the fun. He probably didn't even know what he was doing. I don't know. What is it? Chu Chun laughed foolishly, which made everyone speechless. So the cynical temperament on this guy's face was actually used to cover up his foolishness? The Immortal Emperor's 9 melodies record the world's songs that have been passed down from the mythological era. They are either strange songs born from heaven and earth, or divine songs weaved by the music lawyers of the gods. There are a total of 9 kinds. As Yin Nuoxing spoke, she stretched out 4 fingers. 4 of them were born from heaven and earth. 2 of them were controlled by the phoenix, one of the 4 divine beasts that controlled the heavenly music. The remaining 3 were composed by the gods. They are divine songs that are enough to shake heaven and earth. Which 3 are those? Chu Yingzhan's eyes flashed. She was very interested when this was mentioned. The Immortal King's Battle Song, the Celestial Battle Song, and the Silent Divine Song. Yin Nuoxing added softly. These 3 appeared in the ancient era and haven't changed until now. This is enough to prove that they are different from the rest. The prelude to Samsara, the Song of the Nine Nether, the immortal song of the Great Tao, and the lingering sound of primal chaos are the 4 melodies born from heaven and earth. The remaining immortal song of Phoenix Calamity and divine song of Myriad Calamity are controlled by the Phoenix. Except for the Phoenix itself and its signatories, it is difficult for others to obtain them. Even if they obtain them, they can't play them. If they force themselves to play them, they will fall into a situation of eternal damnation. Moreover, if one wants to play the Immortal Emperor's 9 melodies, even the Shun musician would find it difficult to play them completely. Most of the time, it will backfire on oneself. It belongs to the type of self-destruction that hurts the enemy 1,000 times. Therefore, it is also jokingly called the self-destruction divine song. Yin Nuoxing smiled helplessly. In the ancient era, a god was lucky enough to obtain the immortal song of the Great Tao and gave it to a Shun musician. Originally, he thought that he could peek into the secrets of the divine song. As a result, both of them were found dead on the top floor of the pavilion the next day. Their souls did not exist. Their bodies turned into a rain of light and dissipated upon a light touch. They had already died. Even the deity-level performers and listeners are not qualified to peek into the secrets of the divine song. Everyone's expression changed slightly. Yin Nuoxing was also playing the divine song. Didn't that mean? But, idiot, didn't you play it yourself? Nothing happened. Chu Yingzhan was just halfway through her sentence when she froze. She turned her head and saw the surprised gazes of her father and aunt. She couldn't help but smile bitterly. She spoke too fast. Yin Nuoxing didn't mind that she had accidentally revealed the matter. She waved her hand and said, "Because I was just playing the divine song. I didn't use it for anything, nor did I try to analyze it. Naturally, I didn't encounter any calamity. You don't have to worry about cultivating while listening to it. It only helps you enter a state of comprehension. It doesn't target the divine song itself, so there's no harm." Yuanqi scratched his head. It's because of the divine song itself that there's a problem, right? Yin Nuoxing nodded. As long as you don't try to comprehend or analyze the divine song, there's no problem. Chu Yang looked at them. His gaze stopped on Yin Nuoxing. After looking at her for a while, he said, "Then, I wish you all the best. Xian Er and the others are quite noisy. You have to bear with them. They're actually good children. It's just that they don't usually interact with people of the same age. They're very happy to meet you, so they're noisy." Chu Zhangping transmitted his voice to Yin Nuoxing. These words, which sounded like he was entrusting her, made Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitch. After a while, she smiled and nodded. "Don't worry. That's just how that crazy girl is. She's crazy by nature. It's not troublesome. Well, I'll take good care of them." Chu Yang and Chu Zhangping watched the group of little fellows turn into streaks of golden light and disappear. After a while, they looked at each other and said helplessly, "These 3 brats probably won't be coming home for a while." This was also the reason why they entrusted Chu Yingzhan and her siblings to Yin Nuoxing. There shouldn't be many people who could bully this little guy. It seemed like a good idea to let the 3 of them follow him to gain experience. In the sky, a golden light flashed. A group of people suddenly appeared. Naturally, it was Yin Nuoshing and the others. The distance from the Pillar of Creation to the immortal King Valley was like nothing to him. The speed of light was about 600,000 miles. This distance didn't even require the speed of light. It's said to be the immortal King Valley. I didn't expect it to be like this. Looking at the scene below, everyone sighed with emotion. Yuanshi's cheeks twitched. He couldn't help but scratch the back of his head. He only felt that his head was very itchy. Below them was the place where 2 or 3 mountain ranges converged. 2 of them were thousands of miles apart. In the middle, there was a huge basin that was thousands of miles wide. At one end of the basin, there was a mountain range that crossed it. It disrupted the parallel arrangement of the 2 mountain ranges, forming a winding path that led to the distance. The 3 mountain ranges were all tens of thousands of feet high. Halfway up the mountain ranges, the cliffs were vertical and steep. There was a strong energy wind hovering above. Even a middle-level god wouldn't be able to cross it. He could only walk in from the path that was sandwiched between the 3 mountain ranges. In the valley, there were many buildings. Many of the buildings were embedded in the mountains. There were also many smaller mountain ranges in the valley. There were also many mountain peaks. However, compared to the 3 majestic mountain ranges, they were like little babies. It was like a mysterious sect that was hidden far away from the world. Every day, it was associated with clear springs and forests. Just by looking at it, one could feel a great sense of mystery. My sister and I have been to the Immortal King Mountain range many times, but we have never entered it. It is said that there is a strong wind that never stops howling above the mountain range. Even a middle-level god would find it difficult to rush in directly against the strong wind. If a god appeared in the Immortal King Valley, he or she would be suppressed by the strong wind, Chu Chun said. This is the first time I have seen the entire Immortal King Valley like this. It's so good. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't think of a good way to describe it. So you're saying that only beginner gods can come to this place? Yin Nuoshing looked at him and said, Yes, the only entrance is that path. Chu Xianling nodded. Yin Nuoshing responded. He squinted his eyes slightly, and the light of energy surged in his eyes. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but laugh. This guy's eyes could almost see through all the mysterious things in the world. There was basically no mystery to speak of when he saw it. Interesting. After a moment, Yin Nuoshing's lips curled into an evil smile. He waved his hand and said to everyone, Let's go in through the path. What? Chu Yingzhan widened her eyes in shock. Based on your character, shouldn't you rush through the strong wind and go in directly? Why would you take the safe passage? Brother, don't tell me you didn't see through it. Little Purple Soul sat on his shoulder and muttered. Unexpectedly, Yin Nuoshing really nodded. When everyone's expression stiffened, he opened his mouth and explained, The strong wind of energy is nothing. It's just a breeze of energy. What's worse is the thing behind it. I guess that the strong wind of energy has killed many people, right? When he said the last sentence, he looked at Chu Chun and the others. The latter nodded and said in a serious voice, I heard that a senior emperor god tried to break through the strong wind of energy. When he tried to do so, he died. He was a living example. Everyone is very afraid of this place. In the end, those who want to come here can only follow the rules and take the small path. The result is normal. After all, that is the last barrier left behind by the will of the gods. Those who dare to break through will be crushed into powder by the power of the gods, Yin Nuoshing said calmly. The strong light in his eyes gradually dimmed and returned to normal. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. The last inheritor of the Celestial King War Song left the Celestial King War Song here. If it's really the Celestial King War Song, perhaps he was choosing an inheritor. After all, it's one of the Celestial Emperor's 9 songs. Isn't it a pity that the inheritance was cut off? Just like how he left those 9 broken things behind in the past. Yin Nuoshing lowered his eyelids slightly. Other than leaving the inheritance to continue, perhaps it's also a very helpless wish. Wish? Everyone was at a loss. Inheritance and wish, how were these two things related? Yin Nuoshing nodded and whispered softly, Tell those who are still moving forward that we once stopped here, but we can no longer move forward. We entrust everything from now on to you. Remember that we once existed." Xian's Mei Mao's eyes flickered slightly. She remembered what he said at that time. What is at the end of existence? Was this a different kind of entrustment? Entrusting it to someone who could understand the meaning behind it? Letting that person continue to move forward with this sad wish was like entrusting it to someone so that their existence would not lose its original meaning. Chu Chun and Chu Xianling were still not used to the gloomy atmosphere that occasionally appeared. They wanted to say something, but they were afraid of breaking this strange atmosphere. They could feel a sense of heaviness that was as heavy as a mountain. "I won't stop." Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. "The past, the present, and the future. This time I won't stop. I will definitely walk to the end and find the meaning of the end. Perhaps the other Empyrean gods are the same. There are very few traces and inheritances of Empyrean gods left behind in the realm of the gods." Yin Nuashing's eyes flashed. They're also proud people. If they want to walk to the end of the path by themselves, even death cannot stop them. Even if their souls are destroyed in the great Yuan realm, they want to step out by themselves. They don't want others to replace them and deceive themselves into thinking that they have something to entrust to. This sentence ignited everyone's fighting spirit. It swept away the gloomy and solemn atmosphere just now. It was as if there was a flame burning in their hearts. Although I don't quite understand, Chu Chun clenched his fist and waved his hand. He suddenly laughed and said, "Now, take the first step." 15 minutes later, Yin Nuashing and the rest entered the narrow mountain path. The towering mountain walls around them were covered with strange scars. At first glance, it was obvious that they were not natural scars but man-made. There were also some traces left behind by elements, telling the people who came here about the tragic battle that had happened here. At this moment, this narrow mountain path that was less than 100 meters wide was being stared at by at least 100 pairs of malicious eyes. The hundreds of flashing energy in the surroundings were immediately cleared. The moment the energy disappeared, except for Yin Nuashing, Chu Xianling, and Chu Chun, the figures of everyone else suddenly disappeared and rushed in all directions. 2. Rumble. On the cliff, a series of loud explosions suddenly erupted. Dozens of bursts of energy suddenly burst out, filling the entire cliff in a flash. Bursts of energy bombarded those people and the cliff like a violent storm, causing severe scars to appear on the extremely hard cliff. A series of miserable screams rang out in the valley. One figure after another was thrown into the air or smashed into the opposite cliff. Half of the person fell headlong into the ground or was embedded in the cliff. Several kinds of elemental energy burst out, crackling. The energy storm blew up and was annihilated at an extremely fast speed. The violent flow of energy caused a howling wind in the valley. 3. Yin Nuashing suddenly opened her eyes. At the instant he opened his eyes, all the gales that had swept through the valley suddenly stopped as if they had agreed to it beforehand. A gentle breeze blew past him, and he saw Ziyin, Yuan Shi, and the others standing behind him with smiles on their faces. Their positions hadn't changed, just like before. On the cliffs and between the valley, a large number of people were lying on the ground. At this moment, they were hugging their own bodies and groaning in pain. Some of them were even on the verge of dying. Chu Chun and Chu Xianling widened their eyes. The former's jaw was almost dislocated, while the latter was covering her red lips with her small hands. Her face was full of disbelief. Those were 100 beginner-level gods, and there were more than 10 godly masters among them. There were only 9 of them. Although there was a godly emperor and a godly king among them, they only made a symbolic move and did not exert much strength. You're stunned? Your sister hasn't used her full strength yet. Chu Yingzhan patted the back of their heads and laughed. It's rare to get something good from the fool, but I can't show my strength. What a disappointment. Chu Chun and Chu Xianling nodded in a daze. Then they thought of something and looked at Yin Nuashing. They remembered the first time they met. And they also heard that the divine body of Yin Nuashing had caused a lot of trouble in the yin-yang world. She had fought against the young experts of Kuan Yuan and the demon realm alone and killed 20,000 of them. She had also destroyed tens of thousands of divine artifacts of level 5 or 6. At first, they did not believe it, but now that they knew that the divine body of Yin Nuashing was Yin Nuashing, they seemed to believe it more or less. They could be sure that although their sister had caused a lot of trouble before, she was definitely not so violent. These changes happened during the time when she left home and came back, and probably had a lot to do with him. Chapter 972. In the Valley of the Immortal King, there were mountains, forests, and plains. Jade palaces and celestial palaces stood in great numbers like a hidden sect. However, everything here did not belong to any single force or person. It was built by the people from all over the divine world who gathered here. However, most of them were from the Kuan Yuan region. The name of the Valley of the Immortal King was not very well known and could not be spread to other regions. Even if this mysterious valley was related to music, it was the same. There were once Emperor God strong men who speculated that it was related to the battle song of the Immortal King. In the end, it was just a combination of several speculations. It felt like one of the 9 songs of the Immortal Emperor. As for whether it was true, Yin Nuashing had to see it for herself. There were probably not many people in this world who could distinguish the 9 songs of the Immortal Emperor. This Valley of the Immortal King has developed like a small city. In an inn in the valley, Yin Nuashing and the others had just found a place to rest. At this time, they couldn't help but sigh. The group stretched. They were surprised by this place. It did not look like an ordinary valley, but more like a hidden city. This place was quite famous in the Kuan Yuan region's Kuan Yin land and had developed for many years. It's quite simple. It looks like a simple inn or tavern. There are no calming decorations. Everything is simple. It's so simple that you can pack everything up in 3 minutes and run away quickly, Yuanshi said. He slumped on the wooden chair and felt uncomfortable all over, as if there were nails on the chair. Where's the lingering sound you were talking about? Why didn't I hear it? Yin Nuashing looked at Chu Yingjian and the others. There were many people in this place. Only beginner-level gods could enter. Oh, there was also a divine emperor. Fortunately, Ming was stuck in this realm and did not break through. Otherwise, she would have to hide in his soul and chat and drink tea with Ziyi and the others. That melody hasn't always existed. It's just a description to say that it has been reverberating for tens of thousands of years. I once heard the melody drifting out from outside the Immortal King Valley, but no one has been able to find the exact location of the Immortal King Valley. This place has been turned upside down by people, and now they are simply living here. After tens of thousands of years of investigation, no one has been able to find it, but they have discovered many strange things, Chu Chan said. Something strange. Everyone turned to look at him. Chu Chan nodded. That's what that group of people was talking about. Inside the Immortal King Valley, there are many mountain walls and cliffs with many strange marks. No one can understand them, but occasionally, someone will be able to comprehend something from those strange marks that look like pictures or runes. It's very mysterious. The triggering conditions are unknown, and it's not clear what one can comprehend. Could it be Kanzaki's writing? Xian said as she looked at Yin Nuashing. Since it involved the gods, which they did not understand, she could only ask the former god, who is now an idiot. Yin Nuashing shook her head. There are as many guesses as you want. If you want to know the truth, you have to go to the scene and take a look. Then let's go. Time is passing, and opportunities are vanishing. Let's seize every opportunity we have. Let's go. Chu Chan waved his hand excitedly. When he turned around, he bumped into the door with a thud. His nose was flattened. Everyone was speechless. Look at how anxious you are. Your younger brother is indeed your younger brother. Yin Nuashing said to Chu Yingjian with an inexplicable expression, like sister, like brother. At least the latter had inherited his sister's impatience, although there seemed to be something wrong with this inheritance. Chu Yingjian rolled her eyes at him fiercely and reached out to pinch him on the back of his waist. The rest of the group also called out twice to raise their spirits. They followed the excited Chu Chun out of the inn. Only Chu Xianling could not help but cover her face. She felt that her younger brother was a little funny. There were many people in Yin Nuoxing's group, but none of them knew anything about the Immortal King Valley. However, this was not a problem for a group with a large group of beauties and different temperaments. They could ask any one of them what they wanted to know. For example, at this moment, Chu Yingzhan randomly pulled a passerby over. That passerby was originally a little impatient, but when he saw Chu Yingzhan, he was mesmerized and spat out all the information in a daze. The nearest historical remains. Yes, those strange traces are called historical remains. Although no one can understand them, they're treated as carefully as if they were ancient relics. Therefore, they're called historical remains. Chu Yingzhan ran back and pointed in a direction with her slender finger. The nearest place is on a cliff. It's very close. With the group's speed, especially with Yin Nuoxing leading the group, they arrive at that very close place in no time. That cliff wasn't on the two mountain ranges that surrounded the Immortal King Valley. Instead, it was on a mountain peak that was 1,000 feet tall. That place was filled with strange rocks and was a little messy. That place seemed to be a naturally formed rock platform. On the inner side of the mountain, a cliff that was 10 feet tall had been dug out. On that cliff, there were 4 diagrams that looked like graffiti. There was an obvious gap between the 4 diagrams, and at the gap, there were traces of incompleteness. It was as though the diagrams had been cut apart, and the 4 diagrams couldn't be pieced together. There were many people sitting cross-legged on this strange rocky land. There were also people walking back and forth in front of the 4 diagrams. When Yin Nuoxing and the rest arrived, there were already many people here. Some of them had been sitting cross-legged here for a long time to comprehend and cultivate, although they might not be able to comprehend anything. Those gathered here were all experts of the younger generation. There were people from divine sons to divine kings. There were slightly fewer divine emperors, and there seemed to be no demigods. There were also people like Yin Nuoxing and the rest who were new here. They were staring blankly at the 4 diagrams. Some people were scratching their ears and cheeks. Their eyes were red, and they seemed to be anxious. They were all experts of the younger generation and were geniuses. At this moment, they couldn't even understand these strange diagrams, which made them feel embarrassed and angry. You are so arrogant. You can deny the deduction of 10,000 years. Yin Nuoxing and the rest had just walked over, but before they could take a closer look, they heard a somewhat ear-piercing and cold voice from beside them. The group of people, including the others, curiously turned their gazes, only to see a few people wearing the same clothes, who seemed to have come from the same place, confronting the 2 men in front of them. Among the group, the men were handsome and the women were beautiful. Their appearances were not bad, and the ear-piercing words were said by the cold-faced woman. The 2 men also had extraordinary appearances. One of them was as handsome as a demon with an indifferent expression, while the other was as sturdy as a small mountain. However, he wasn't the type that had muscles all over his body. He was simply tall and heavy. When the lazy-looking handsome man standing in front heard this, he couldn't help but sigh and shake his head. As for the tall man behind him, he stared coldly at the woman. For tens of thousands of years, many geniuses have looked at these diagrams and studied the artistic conception in them. They have gained a lot from comprehending them. Are you trying to hide that you don't understand them by saying that they are just meaningless scribbles? Or do you think that everyone is wrong? The woman continued coldly when she saw that he didn't speak. The man sighed softly and said with a faint smile, "Why not?" Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Those who were with the woman couldn't help but laugh out loud and said, "What this little brother said is too funny. Everything here is left behind by high-level gods or even people of a higher realm. You are just a divine son. How can you see through all these? Are you trying to show off your extraordinary vision?" The man's expression suddenly became strange. He shrugged and raised his chin at the man behind him, saying, "I can't be bothered to argue with you. Let's go over there." The majestic and strong man heard this and nodded. Then he glanced at the woman coldly, turned around, and walked toward the diagrams with her. This little episode naturally didn't cause too much of fallout. After a while, it dissipated. The onlookers also felt that they were bored and dispersed. After Yin Nuashing and the others finished watching the show, they also went over to look at the diagrams. How is it? Is it just meaningless scribbles? Yuan Shi asked. Obviously, he was a little concerned about that sentence. Yin Nuashing pondered for a while and took a few steps back to look at the full picture of the 4 diagrams. Those diagrams, just by looking at them, were quite exquisite. Every stroke could be traced, but no pattern could be found. He could only think, although I can't understand this thing, it looks very powerful. At first glance, anyone would think so. However, if you continue to study it, you still wouldn't be able to see anything. At least after Yuan Shi and the others studied it for a while, they felt a little dizzy. A large amount of meaningless and irregular information crashed into their minds. After distinguishing it for a while, their expressions became a little strange. Could it really be just scribbles? Their comprehension ability at this time was naturally not comparable to ordinary people. It was no wonder that they would have such thoughts. Now, everyone turned to look at Yin Nuashing, who was still in deep thought. Now, they were waiting for the big boss to make a decision about what this thing was. 5 minutes later, Yin Nuashing smiled faintly. The moment the corners of his mouth curled up, everyone immediately focused. He had something to say. The traces left behind by the gods can be confirmed, Yin Nuashing said with a faint smile. Naturally, he said it in his soul. It would be very scary if he said it directly. Is it scribbles? Nightmare asked impatiently. Yin Nuashing shook his head, then nodded. Yes and no. Everyone was dumbfounded. I said before that everything the gods do has a specific meaning. Even if it doesn't have any meaning to them, to others, it will disturb the meaning of reality. It's the same for everything, from yawning to going to the toilet. This is the disturbance brought about by their own powerful concept laws, which disturbs the situation in the present world. Yin Nuashing said, moreover, to leave something like this. At first glance, it looks like something that was left behind by someone. When everyone heard this, they pondered for a while and nodded. And then, if you look at it alone, these things are meaningless. Just like what you think, it's just scribbles. That person wasn't wrong, but you can only see the surface. You can't understand the things at the level of the gods, except for me. As Yin Nuashing spoke, he stretched out his hand and gestured 4 pictures. This is a part of a huge picture. The traces left behind by the god statue's deduction. At the mention of this, everyone was not unfamiliar with it. Back then, the huge picture they saw in the Void Fortress was also a deduction by the god statue. That god had deduced the future path of a god. Then, what was the god who left behind the traces in the Valley of the Immortal King deducing? If they could figure this out, they would probably be able to achieve the goal of this trip. Well, although what Big Brother Yin said is very mysterious. Chu Chun scratched his head and said, but didn't Big Brother Yin say that it's something at the level of the gods? How did you understand it? Yin Nuashing was stunned. Only then did he remember that there were 2 people in his team who didn't know much about him. He had just thought of it, and naturally, no one had thought of it in advance. Therefore, at this time, they all had a big headache. How were they going to tell his 2 fangirls clearly about Yin Nuashing in 10 sentences? It's your turn. Tell your sister-in-law. Yin Nuashing glanced at Chu Yingzhan. If she didn't explain this matter clearly, Chu Chun and Chu Yingzhan would never understand. She couldn't explain it clearly, so she might as well tell them directly. After all, they were her younger brother and sister, so it didn't matter. When Chu Yingzhan heard this, she rolled her eyes. However, it was indeed more appropriate for her to say this. Without further delay, she hooked her hands and pulled the 2 of them to the side. The communication between their souls was extremely fast. In less than 5 seconds, Chu Chun and Chu Xianling widened their eyes. Their expressions became more and more complicated, and they became more and more shocked. Then, they slowly calmed down and finally became numb. They looked confused and at a loss, and suspected that they were hearing things. 5 minutes later, the 2 of them, who had finished talking, walked back with an excited Chu Yingzhan. At this time, Chu Chun and Chu Xianling had extremely complicated expressions. The way they looked at Yin Nuoxing was a little different. The former was full of admiration, while the latter was full of Mei Mao. It doesn't seem to be a bad influence. Everyone muttered in their hearts. They couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it. It was fine as long as they weren't scared silly. Are you done? If you're done, you can leave. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the three of them and said, what about the things here? Didn't you say that we can comprehend them? Yuan Shi quickly said, what do you want to comprehend by looking at a puzzle piece? Using a pseudo-state of comprehension to blindly think about the philosophy of life. Do you think that you should have an epiphany, and then you have an epiphany? In the end, you sense a bunch of things that you deceive yourself with? Yin Nuoxing looked at him angrily and said, these pictures have a kind of meaningless artistic conception. They can only bring you into a state of comprehension, but they definitely won't let you comprehend the true meaning of the pictures. In the end, you will only get a head full of messy information. Then, when you organize it yourself, you will accidentally understand things that you couldn't understand before. This is their so-called harvest. After all, this was left behind by the gods. Even if it's trash, it's still trash from the gods. It will still allow them to comprehend it. In other words, this picture has a catalyst that allows you to harvest the fruit you planted in advance, but there's no fruit that you can pick on the spot. Such sharp words made everyone's breathing slow subconsciously. They nodded blankly and said, so now, go find the other puzzle pieces and see if they can be put together. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and was about to lead the group away from this rugged place filled with strange rocks. This group of people was probably the fastest to arrive and the fastest to leave. The others were still racking their brains, thinking that they could gain something. The group of people and the two men who were quarreling just now also stood there like the others, thinking. There are also traces left behind in other places not far away, but they may be different. I heard from others that there are many things left behind in the valley of the Immortal King, and they are of different shapes and sizes. It's not just the pictures that we just saw. Chu Chun told Yin Nuoxing the information that he had just heard. Yin Nuoxing frowned slightly. They had now left the cliff just now and stopped at the periphery of a place where there were more people. After hearing this news, he didn't quite understand. He didn't quite understand what the god who left behind the valley of the Immortal King was thinking. Although the cultivation of the gods was different, and the paths that they took were also very strange, the matters of the divine were basically the same, and he could get a feel of it. As for the deduction of the god statue that was linked to the divine right, it should be, maybe it was similar, but he was a little confused by the way that the god was messing around. At this time, Yin Nuoxing and the others were in a magnificent stone square. There were many huge stone pillars that were up to 10 feet tall in the square. Some of them had already collapsed under the erosion of time. They were only made of ordinary stone and didn't have a trace of the power of the gods to preserve them. Their owner probably didn't care about this huge stone square when he was alive. Other than the row of statues in the deepest part of the square, these broken pillars were useless. What's this circle of people doing here? Yuan Shi stretched his neck and looked past the circle of people at the 10 or so statues placed in the middle of the square. These statues all had a majestic aura, and an ancient and decaying aura permeated from them, causing many people present to turn pale. The majestic power seemed to be stronger the closer one was to the statues, but no one felt anything. They only felt that the profound technique in their bodies seemed to be operating on its own. That divine technique above the divine grade, this feeling made them all stunned. After they reacted, they quickly divided their attention to suppress the operation of the divine grade profound technique. It didn't seem very good to operate it in this place. Then they looked at each other and found that the others were also the same. They couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that they had accidentally entered the domain of some god, and the divine grade profound technique was spontaneously operating to protect them. Chu Chun, Fairy, you guys stay by my side and don't wander around. Yuan Shi, Xian, you guys just let the divine technique operate on its own. There won't be a big movement. It can protect you guys from being hurt by the aura here. Yin Nuoxing turned around and instructed, let's go up and take a look. Everyone nodded. After a moment, they all took a deep breath. After they were ready, they gave Yin Nuashing a signal with their eyes. Then he began to walk towards the center of the square, and everyone followed closely behind. Everyone's speed was very fast. In a short while, they had already walked halfway from the edge of the square. The people who passed by had their eyes tightly closed, and their faces were distorted. They were filled with pain, as if they were enduring some kind of great pain. The people who sat down cross-legged were also sweating like rain, and their auras were restless. This scene made Yin Nuashing's mood a little strange. The things that the god left behind were definitely not for others to cultivate and comprehend. However, these people were using this god's aura that was diluted hundreds of billions of times to comprehend. It was like using a kitchen knife to hoe the ground. It wasn't impossible, but it wasn't suitable. When they got close to the center, the statues clearly appeared in front of Yin Nuashing and the others. There were a total of 12 stone statues on the left and right sides, and they were all birds and beasts. The statue in the middle and the innermost part was a humanoid statue. The face was quite blurry, and the facial features couldn't be seen clearly. Even so, everyone could still feel a supreme aura that was above heaven and earth and independent of the rules from the statue. Under that aura, the surrounding people felt as if they were being suppressed. Only Yin Nuashing and the others were not restricted. Is that the god from the past? Everyone raised their heads and looked at the huge humanoid statue. A touch of awe surged in their hearts. Chapter 973. It doesn't matter if you don't respect the heavens or the earth. It doesn't matter if you look down on those who are a little stronger than you. However, you have to maintain sufficient respect for the gods. Even between gods, as long as they are not enemies, they will maintain respect. The divine realm will not look down on those who are also gods. Yin Nuashing's words were still ringing in everyone's minds. At this moment, when they saw the statue, they recalled these words and could not help but look at him. Yin Nuashing's expression was still indifferent at this moment. There was light in his eyes as he looked at the statue that was getting taller and taller. There was some respect in his eyes. Everyone also remembered that in the Jiesu's secret realm, he had expressed his respect to the two divine realm gods. There was also the god's corpse in the heavenly abyss. He had also said that he would go back and help the god's corpse when he had the time. In his heart, he maintained respect for the gods, even if he was once a divine realm god. Everyone wanted to ask the answer, but Yin Nuashing did not answer. He only replied with a smile, "You will understand when you reach the divine realm." As Yin Nuashing and the others continued to approach, there were fewer and fewer people around them. Those who could reach this position had a very strong aura. They could no longer see any son of God experts. Those who could see were all divine masters and divine kings. However, there were no divine emperors. Some people closed their eyes to rest. When they sensed a large group of people coming over, they let out a puzzled sound. Then, they turned around and saw Yin Nuashing and the others striding over. They were not affected at all. This made their eyes freeze. This group of people, many people opened their eyes, and a solemn look flashed in their eyes. They were able to withstand the power of the gods to reach this place. They didn't sweat a lot and walk step by step with difficulty. However, at this moment, they saw a group of people who were so unique. They were strolling leisurely in this place as if they were not affected at all. How could they not be shocked? Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Yin Nuashing did not look at those who were overtaken by them. He stared at the statue without blinking. As he got closer and closer, the number of people around him decreased rapidly. Soon, there were only 4 or 5 people standing in the same place. Stop! Just as Yin Nuashing's group was about to overtake the person at the front, the person seated cross-legged suddenly opened his eyes. A low and deep voice was emitted, causing everyone to be stunned. Yin Nuashing was originally thinking about something, but this sudden sentence interrupted his train of thought. Moreover, he even forgot what he was thinking about. He couldn't help but frown slightly. He turned to look at the person who spoke and asked in a slightly unhappy voice, "What's the matter? I should have said that before I go over." No one is allowed to step over there. That person narrowed his eyes and stared at Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Xian, Yuan Shi, and the others were also stunned. They looked at each other with strange gazes. Although there were no ripples on their faces, their souls were already in an uproar. Who is this guy? I don't know. It's just a godly king. All right, I know I shouldn't say just a godly king. Isn't it just a godly king? Who knows how many godly kings have been killed by boss? Yin Nuoxing sized this person up and said indifferently, "Why should I?" "Because of me." A sharp light bloomed in that person's eyes. It looked very frightening, but it had no effect on Yin Nuoxing's group. This answer made Yin Nuoxing's forehead fill with layers of black lines. He couldn't help but sigh. He was also a fool. In order to deal with this kind of person, he had interrupted his train of thought. He might as well have ignored him from the start. Yin Nuoxing shook his head, waved his hand, and continued to walk forward. As he turned around, he couldn't help but say, "There's something wrong with his brain." The moment his voice fell, a light flashed in that person's eyes. A cold, killing intent flashed in that person's eyes. When he saw Yin Nuoxing's group strolling leisurely in this place, he also felt a little puzzled. After thinking for a while, he closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. This matter wasn't over yet. A group of people walked to the foot of the huge statue and raised their heads to look at the 300-meter-tall, human-shaped statue. Everyone looked at each other and helplessly spread out their hands. Other than feeling that the god art was circulating very quickly, they did not feel anything else. Furthermore, looking at Yin Nuoxing now, they could see that he was frowning and had a face full of displeasure. "What's wrong?" Ming felt that something was wrong and couldn't help but ask. Yin Nuoxing's expression relaxed slightly. After a moment, he sighed and said, "That bastard just now, for no reason at all, he called me. Thanks to him, I forgot what I was thinking just now. Annoying flea. I thought that he would have some constructive suggestions when he called me. In the end, he said a bunch of boring things. Seriously, my head is about to explode." Everyone was speechless when they saw him stomping his feet in anger. They looked at each other and spread their hands. Yuer thought for a while and said, "Brother Yin, should we crush him to death?" Everyone's faces darkened. This little girl's words were really scary. Little Moon quickly pulled Yuer to the side to educate her. Yin Nuoxing was also stunned. He smiled bitterly, waved his hand, and said, "Killing him won't help me remember anything. It's meaningless. It's fine as long as he doesn't bother me." After he finished speaking, he looked at the statue again. Everyone saw that he was deep in thought and put up a finger in front of their mouths to signal for him to be quiet. After a long time, Yin Nuoxing blinked and finally connected the broken circuit in his mind. He remembered what he had just thought of and looked at the statues again. He paused for a while at the statue of the godly spirit. Some mysterious light flashed in his eyes. After a while, he nodded and turned to everyone, saying, "All right, let's go to the next place." Everyone nodded and quickly followed. As they jogged, they asked, "Done? Is there anything special?" "Puzzle pieces. About 3 pieces." As Yin Nuoxing spoke, Yuan Shi and the others had strange expressions. Why did it feel like the direction was getting weirder and weirder? They were even playing with the puzzle pieces. Couldn't these godly spirits do something serious? In their initial impression, godly spirits should be high and mighty, indifferent and powerful. They didn't necessarily care about the common people. They should be the kind that could make the whole world revolve around them with a wave of their hand. In fact, the godly spirits' relics and heavenly gods' relics that they had seen in reality all gave them the feeling that the owner of the relics was playful and was an old urchin. Moreover, the higher the realm of a godly spirit, the more playful they were. This even included everyone looked at Yin Nuoxing indifferently, including the original heavenly god of chaos who wanted to idle around and drink tea and sleep every day. In any case, the high and mighty image of godly spirits had been tormented until they were like old urchins. No matter how hard they worked, they couldn't change it. This made everyone feel deeply tired. When they passed by that person just now, Nightmare and Yuan, she looked at each other. Then, the corners of their mouths pulled up into a sinister smile. The two of them separated and walked past that person on both sides. Then, they returned to the group as if nothing had happened. It was as if they had been distracted and accidentally walked the wrong way. Yin Nuashing was still deep in thought and didn't notice anything, but the others saw it clearly. They couldn't help but facepalm. What were these two guys trying to do? After a long time, when Yin Nuashing and the others had all left the square, they suddenly heard an earth-shattering roar of fury behind them. Countless people were awakened. Even Yin Nuashing was startled. She turned around and couldn't see what was happening in the depths of the square. She frowned in confusion. Then, she saw Yuan Shi and Nightmare laughing softly. She was even more confused and couldn't help but ask, "What are you laughing about?" "Nothing, nothing." Yuan Shi and Nightmare waved their hands and said with a faint smile, "We're just loosening the bones of a certain flea." Xian and the others couldn't help but laugh bitterly. They didn't need to guess to know what would happen if someone loosened their bones while they were cultivating. That person didn't have a spell formation like Yin Nuashing's, so it was impossible for her to prevent any accidents from happening if she was awakened during cultivation. In particular, Yuan Shi and Nightmare seemed to have used a backup technique that delayed her awakening for such a long time. That guy's cultivation is at a critical juncture. Nightmare chuckled softly and licked the corner of her mouth. Let's see if his luck is bad enough to cause him to go berserk. No matter what, this time's cultivation was wasted. At this moment, Yin Nuashing finally understood what the two of them had done. He couldn't help but laugh bitterly, but he didn't take it to heart. He could feel that person's killing intent just now. Not killing him on the spot was already giving him a way out. As for Yuan Shi and Nightmare's little revenge, it was enough to make up for the time he was disturbed. A Divine King expert wouldn't be affected so easily by being interrupted during cultivation. At the initial divine level, accidents during cultivation weren't considered fatal. It's just a flea. Why do you care about him? Even slapping him would make my hands dirty, Yin Nuashing said unhappily. That's right, that's right. Even Little Star isn't so arrogant as to block someone's path. I can't stand it anymore, Yuan Shi said with a nod as he gently stroked his white robe. Yin Nuashing's face darkened. He was more or less shameless, so he couldn't say such silly words. No, he seemed to have said it once before, and it was a similar situation. Yin Nuashing and Xian looked at each other and suddenly thought of the time when they were at the High Light Academy. Both of them thought of this scene. Yin Nuashing's pretty face turned red, and Xian couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Yuan Shi and Nightmare still didn't know about this. After leaving the square, the group visited the places where people gathered in the Immortal King Valley, looking for the fragments of the deity statue left behind in the Immortal King Valley. Only Yin Nuashing could handle this matter, so they didn't split up. The group walked around the Immortal King Valley as if they were on a vacation. Many people knew that this group of people had come to the valley. Their characteristics were that they were extremely good-looking and had different temperaments. Their footprints were almost everywhere in the Immortal King Valley. A day passed very quickly, and unknowingly, night had fallen. However, there were still people lingering in the places where there were traces left behind in the valley. They didn't care about the night and wanted to seize the time to cultivate. It's been 3 days. It will be played again today. That immortal song? I just came here the day before yesterday. I haven't heard it before, but I'm looking forward to it. I heard that it's one of the 9 songs of the Immortal Emperor, the Immortal King battle song. I wonder if it's true? It doesn't seem like it. Battle songs are usually passionate and unyielding, tugging at the heartstrings and making one's blood boil. However, the song at night is quite light and disorderly. As expected of senior brother, you know so clearly. Yin Nuashing and the group had just walked into the inn when a group of people walked out. They heard the voices of those people, and when they passed by, they couldn't help but look at them. Their hearts trembled slightly, and their eyes glazed over. Hey, senior brother, there's so many beauties. Shoo, lower your voice. The people here can't be underestimated, especially those extremely beautiful women. Watch your eyes, or they will be gouged out in the next second. Senior brother is wise. The group of people hurriedly walked away, not daring to look back. Yin Nuoxing and the others looked at each other and scratched their heads. Why did they feel like they were like wild beasts? When they returned to the main room, the group of people slumped down without any grace. They sat and lay in all kinds of strange postures, which made Chu Chun and Chu Xianling, who were not very familiar with them, feel a little awkward. Chu Yingzhan saw that the two were a little unnatural. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and say, "Little Chun, cross your legs." Chu Chun was stunned, but he was used to listening to his sister's orders, so he subconsciously crossed his right leg over his left. "Lie back." Chu Chun did as he was told. He lay back on the soft sofa, then let out a sigh of relief. Yuan Shi and the others also looked relaxed. This place was a little shabby, but they were very satisfied with a big and soft sofa. After flying around for a day, they finally had some free time. Little Purple Soul immediately jumped around the room with a face full of excitement. She kept shaking Xiao Xian and Little Magic. The two poor little guys were almost dizzy from being shaken by the little girl. Being sympathized with them. She carefully took the two little guys from Little Purple Soul's hands. The little girl felt that her hands were empty, but she didn't feel anything. Then, she jumped onto Yin Nuoxing's stomach and said with a smile, Brother, did you find anything fun today?" She had almost fallen asleep while resting her head on Ziyan's thigh. Now that she was gently called, she immediately woke up. She lowered her head and looked at the little girl who was lying on his stomach with her hands supporting her cheeks and her legs swaying behind her. He smiled bitterly and shook his head, saying, "There's nothing fun about it." Today, he ran around and found about 20 ruins. Although Yin Nuoxing felt that it was not right to call this place a ruin, he could not think of what to call it at the moment, so he called it down. In these 20 or so places, there were patterns, stone carvings, energy traces, a sword mark, a strange mark carved on the cliff, and ancient words. These were all on the surface. He extracted patterns from these things. They were similar to the 4 patterns he saw at the beginning. Yin Nuoxing thought for a moment. He waved his hand and projected the patterns in the air. Before they were projected, he waved his hand and sealed the place with a barrier to prevent others from seeing them. Because he was lying down, the pieces of patterns were also lying on their backs in the room. Everyone looked at them and lay down as well. Then they saw 100 strange patterns. They were all exquisite lines and patterns. When they looked at them, they could only feel that they were awesome. They even felt a little dizzy. Not many of these patterns were repeated. They also looked like lines that formed something together. However, no one could tell what it was. Ugh, I don't understand. Yuan Shi felt dizzy. It's so messy, so messy, so messy, so messy. Nightmare was going crazy. Ziyan and the other girls looked at it for a long time. Then, they shook their heads. I give up too. I don't understand it at all. What a coincidence. I don't understand it either. Yin Nuoxing laughed. The room instantly fell silent. Sensing everyone's strange gazes, Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly. Because I really don't understand it. These are like puzzle pieces. Look. As he spoke, he waved his hand, causing the patterns to change in order. Some of the patterns on the edges and corners could be pieced together to form a complete part. Everyone watched as the puzzle pieces changed and changed. In the end, only a small part of the puzzle was pieced together. Furthermore, these parts were not connected together. There were still more than 60 patterns floating in the air by themselves. As Yin Nuoxing changed the pictures himself, he was stunned for a moment. Those that couldn't be pieced together were all patterns that he had extracted. Originally, they were hidden in the stone statues and the engravings. They only had a chaotic concept and required special means to see these patterns. At this moment, they couldn't be pieced together. Among the patterns that were pieced together, there were the 4 patterns that were directly imprinted on the cliff. It was the same for the other 30 or so patterns. They were imprinted on the cliff, mountain wall, or stone. Although the parts that couldn't be pieced together looked the same as the others, he felt a little strange. It can't be, right? Yin Nuoxing suddenly straightened up. 5 extremely dim black rings appeared behind him. Some strange energy surged out from his body. Seeing him pull out the Dita level nomological power, and godly right power, everyone was stunned. They all sat up with solemn expressions. Godly right, distortion. Yin Nuoxing's palm pressed on a few pieces of patterns that he had taken out from the dozen or so statues. With a light shout, those complicated patterns suddenly twisted in front of everyone's eyes. The exquisite patterns changed from the original lines to lines of mountains, then twisted into the stars in the sky, and then into a winding river of lines. The changes after that could no longer be seen clearly. They could only see that the patterns were flashing at an extremely high frequency. Godly right, distortion. I can only use a very small part of the godly right power now. I can't command anything or fight against enemies, but I can still use it to make some insignificant changes and distortions. Yin Nuoxing explained to everyone, this pattern may have been distorted before. I try to follow the original path and twist it back to its original appearance. Every change is a distortion. Everyone understood. Nightmare rolled his eyes and couldn't help but say, but the number of distortions is a little too much. How afraid is that deity that thing will be found? This. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. He had already changed it 100 times. I've got it. A minute later, Yin Nuoxing exclaimed softly. Then his palm paused. What appeared in front of him was still the same pattern. It was completely different from the one that appeared at the beginning. There were no traces of the same pattern at all. Let's try putting it together, Yuanshi said quickly. Yin Nuoxing nodded. He waved his hand and moved these few pieces of the pattern. He compared them with the places where more than 30 pieces were put together into 4 or 5 balls. After a while, he found traces that could be connected. He put them together with a little surprise. It seems that I guessed correctly. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. After a while, Xian frowned slightly. But if that's the case, won't only deities be able to solve this mystery? Everyone was stunned. They heard her continue. But powerhouses above the Immortal King Valley can't enter. Then, maybe this has nothing to do with the Immortal King battle song? Yuanshi frowned. After thinking for a while, he said, maybe this is something else, another treasure. Little Star said that this is a fragment left behind by the deity statue. Maybe it's related to something else and has nothing to do with the Immortal King battle song. There's no use guessing too much. We'll know when we solve it. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand to interrupt everyone's guesses. He reminded them in a low voice, sometimes, if you think too much, you'll go astray. Let's leave it at that for now. Everyone nodded and put down the questions in their minds. They raised their heads and watched him distort the patterns one by one. Chapter 974. In the room, Yin Nuoxing looked sleepily at the many patterns floating in the air. From time to time, she would raise her head and yawn, which made everyone in the room want to yawn as well. The puzzle piece floating in the air. Let's just treat it as a puzzle piece for now. There were too many complicated and obscure lines and exquisite lines. They were so exquisite that they dazzled and made everyone's head swell. Everyone else was about to fall asleep. They watched as Yin Nuoxing changed the complicated patterns back and forth and then matched them one by one. There were a few patterns that were distorted for a long time before they were restored to their original state. However, in the end, there were no matching interfaces. The other onlookers felt a headache coming on, let alone the main operator. Now, when he saw the lines, circles, and patterns, he wanted to vomit. His eyes were so wide that he felt dizzy. The 5 divine halos spinning behind him were already dim to begin with. At this moment, they were so dim that they were almost like shadows. I can't take it anymore. Even if you put a knife to my neck, I can't take it anymore. After persevering for another 10 minutes, it was already the middle of the night. Yin Nuoxing finally fainted after 6 hours of high-energy work. She fell headfirst onto the sofa and buried her face in the sofa. She twitched twice and stopped moving. Everyone looked up slightly. They were also in a similar state of dizziness. Yuanshi's face was facing down, and his head hung on the edge of the sofa. He gave Yin Nuoxing a thumbs up and said in a trembling voice, "Brother, you're amazing. 6 hours, you're really persistent. Nightmare's face turned green, and his stomach felt like it was being overturned. Chu-chan was hanging by the window and enjoying the night breeze. When he heard this, he also stuck his head in and said, "I feel much better after vomiting." When Chu Yingzhan heard this, she struggled to move a piece of the pattern over and reflected it on Qinye's face. Chu Chen's body stiffened and his face turned pale. He turned his head and leaned out of the window to breathe in the night breeze. Rubbing her dizzy head, Ming Ming tidied up the white dress on her body and moved Yun Nuoxing's head on her soft thighs. She fanned him with the wings on her back and raised her head. Her beautiful golden eyes looked at the patterns floating in the air. Out of the 60 or so different fragments, more than half of them could be twisted into their original form by the divine right. The remaining 10 or so fragments were originally like this, without any signs of being twisted or changed. The 4 puzzle pieces that were pieced together were the result of the group of people working so hard tonight. At first, Yun Nuoxing twisted and pieced them together by himself. Later on, he felt that it was too troublesome, so he was responsible for restoring the patterns while the others helped to piece them together. This was also the reason why the group of people in this house were so dizzy that they were swaying left and right. Looking at the patterns made them vomit. This thing was beautiful, but it made them dizzy. In the end, it was Yun Nuoxing who fought alone for 2 more hours. At this time, he was also declared dead, and there were still more than 20 pieces that had not been pieced together. After Xian pieced the pieces together, she felt so bad that she fell onto Yun Nuoxing's back. Her mind was a mess, and she felt uncomfortable just thinking about it. "Sister Xian, how many pieces have not been pieced together?" Chu Xianling's voice was weak. Xian struggled to sit up and count, but she heard Qin Yin say softly, 22 pieces. These 22 pieces don't match up. None of the corners match up, and this puzzle has no edges. None of the 4 big pieces have edges. Xian nodded blankly. She buried her face in Yun Nuoxing's back and wrinkled her nose. She felt uncomfortable, so she moved little magic over and used it as a pillow on Yun Nuoxing's back. "Let's call a day," Qin Yin said softly. She was also a little uncomfortable, but not to the point where she almost fainted like everyone else. She was very resistant to things that needed to be carefully and patiently studied. After all, alchemy was also a very time-consuming and laborious kind of thing. Everyone nodded and struggled to get up. When they were ready to get into the room, they looked at Yun Nuoxing and the others and saw that Ming was also sleeping with his little head tilted. They were stunned again. Bing Er saw them, waved to them, and stayed. "I'll take care of Dad and Sister Xian. You can go and rest." Yuan Shi and the others groaned, nodded, and went back to their rooms to sleep with a long yawn. Who said that gods didn't feel tired? After all, they still had to sleep to recover their spiritual power. In terms of spiritual power recovery, a good night's sleep was more effective than practicing. Of course, this was excluding those who knew how to practice their spiritual power. Nightmare greeted everyone. Before he closed the door, he couldn't help but smirk. "I guess I'm going to have a dream about puzzles tonight." Everyone was speechless. They picked up a pillow and wanted to throw it at his face, but when they remembered that they had to sleep tonight, they silently put it down. This guy really touched the pot that didn't boil. Now, they all had a phobia of puzzles. They fell asleep almost as soon as they lay down on the bed. Perhaps they were so tired that they even forgot to dream. It was a dreamless night. On the stone statue square, there were still people practicing under the cover of the night. They were all under the protection of their companions, so no one was worried that they would be attacked or do anything to them during their practice. 100 meters in front of the statue of the god, the person who stopped Yun Nuoxing was still sitting in the same position. Not far behind him, there were 2 men. One was as handsome as a demon, and the other was as strong as a small mountain. They were the 2 people who had seen in the cliffs of the 4 patterns during the day. At this time, these 2 were standing in the same place. Their cheeks were full of determination, and their eyes were closed. The man who looked like a demon would occasionally open his eyes, and there was a flash of light in his eyes. He seemed to be enlightened. After a while, he would take a step forward, then close his eyes again and carefully comprehend. The person beside him would follow suit. After a long time, the two of them stood in the same position as the man, about 10 feet away. They tried to lift their feet, but their faces frowned and their expressions changed slightly. It was very difficult to move in this situation. They looked very calm, but they were under great pressure. They had already used all their strength to resist the aura of the square. They could not move forward. It was not that they did not want to fight, but that the aura was suppressing them and making them unable to move. Is this the end? The man who looked like a demon frowned. Obviously, this was not the result he wanted. He had gained a lot along the way. He thought that he would be able to walk all the way to the statue, but he did not expect to stop here. After a while, he raised his head and looked at the statue of the god. His eyes were as calm as water, and he could not help but smile. Is this the statue of that expert? It's so small. Even the statue in the immortal origin world is bigger than it. Is it very strong? The strong man asked softly. Yanhua, this is a statue of the god. I can feel the aura of the origin of heaven and earth from it. Otherwise, why can't I walk past it? The man who looked like a demon smiled faintly. It's just SOSO. It's just a matter of cultivation level. If your cultivation level is higher, you will be able to walk past it. The man who was called Yanhua did not seem to care about this so-called statue of the god at all. He said indifferently, "You will surpass him in the future." Haha, low-key, low-key. The man who looked like a demon laughed softly with his hands behind his back. His eyes looked very calm, but there was a hidden arrogance in them. Tonight, the music we agreed on didn't play. He raised his head and looked at the night sky. There was an indescribable look in his eyes. I thought I would gain something. Yanhua shook her head helplessly. She knew that he was a musical cultivator and would naturally be very interested in the inexplicable music in the valley. However, the music that was supposed to appear once every 3 days, which was to be played once tonight, had inexplicably not played. I don't know what happened. After standing there for a while, the man who looked like a demon looked at the person who had been sitting there the whole time. He turned his head and said to Yanhua, "This is a rare opportunity. Let's cultivate here." The strong man nodded. The two of them sat down together and closed their eyes. The next morning, Ming woke up quite early in the morning. When he opened his eyes, a golden light flashed across his eyes and gradually weakened. He blinked twice in a daze. He seemed to have accidentally fallen asleep last night. He didn't even have any recollection of what had happened before he fell asleep. The sky was still a little dark. Only a little bit of weak light shone in through the window. At this time, she tilted her head and rested it on a strong shoulder. The long, colorful hair that hung down let her know whose shoulder she was resting on. She was a little confused. Last night, her brother should have slept on her thigh. Yes, it was already dawn. The sky was a little bright. Did her brother wake up so early? The pattern floating in the air was no longer changing. It did not change its order or position. It was emitting a weak blue light. Every line and every pattern was shining. It was like sunlight shining into flowing water. The water reflected some spots of light. The colors were real and flowing. Feeling a warmth on her waist and body, Ming lowered her head. She saw that her body was covered by a white robe. Her small waist was being held by a hand. She turned her head and saw that Xian was resting on Yunnuoxing's thigh. He was wearing a long black windbreaker and had not yet woken up. "Brother, didn't you sleep last night?" Ming asked softly as she rubbed her cheek against his shoulder. Yunnuoxing, whose eyes were emitting colorful lights, suddenly heard a voice by her ear. There was also a warm and fragrant breeze. She was stunned for a moment. After a while, she said, "I slept. I woke up after 3 or 4 hours. Will it be better if you rest more?" Ming frowned slightly. "It's okay. I'm not so tired after sleeping for a while. When I wake up, I can't sleep anymore," Yunnuoxing replied. "Also, I'm a little concerned about this pattern." Ming wrinkled her little nose. She reached out her hands and turned Yunnuoxing's face. When he was not paying attention, she stretched her neck and pressed her red lips deeply on Yunnuoxing's lips. His whole body stiffened, but he seemed to be used to it. After a while, he relaxed. Then I'll make you more energetic." Ming loosened her lips and said lazily. Yin Nuashing did not know whether to laugh or cry. Just as he was about to say something, the girl leaned on his shoulder and closed her eyes, pretending to be asleep. He saw that her face was slightly flushed, and she looked quite cute. The hand around her waist moved up and rubbed her hair. Ming muttered, pulled the hand back to his waist, and closed his eyes again. Yin Nuashing did not move. He glanced at Bing Er, who was sleeping on the side and hugging Little Magic so tightly that Little Magic's round body was deformed. Then he focused all his attention on the pattern. He felt that he could almost see something. When the sky was completely bright, Yuan Shi and the others slowly slipped out of the room. Facing the sunlight that couldn't be seen, they stretched lazily. When they turned their heads, they saw the constantly changing exquisite patterns floating in the living room. Their eyelids trembled, and Chu Chun retched and almost fainted again. They had reached the point where they wanted to vomit when they thought of the pattern. When they walked into the living room, they saw that the three girls were still sleeping. Yin Nuashing was busy alone. Yuan Shi could not help but lower his voice. Yo, you're up so early in the morning to work? Actually, it's almost time. Yin Nuashing tilted his head and looked at them, indicating for them to lower their voices. Then he said, well, I was a little shocked. These patterns are revealing something very shocking. What earth-shattering thing? Boss, were you shocked too? Nightmare sat down casually, poured a cup of tea, and teased. I'm not omnipotent. Sometimes I'm shocked by some unbelievable things. Yin Nuashing shrugged his left shoulder as if he was paralyzed. His right shoulder was occupied by an idiot angel. Chu Yingzhan walked to his side, hugged Xiao Xian, who was on his head, and asked softly, so what did he show you? After a moment of silence, everyone took the opportunity to drink a cup of tea. Then they sat up straight. After a while, they heard him say, the Celestial Emperor's 9 songs left in the Immortal King Valley, although other experts said it was the Immortal King Battle Song. I can't be sure for now. However, what I can be sure of is that the song left here is indeed one of the 9 songs. The owner of the Immortal King Valley, which is that god, used one of the Celestial Emperor's 9 songs as a primer. Using the power of heaven and earth here, he buried many tricks here. He wanted to use that song to artificially lead to another celestial song that exists between heaven and earth. After Yin Nuashing finished speaking, everyone shuddered. In other words, using one celestial song to create another celestial song? Which one? Yuan Shi swallowed his saliva and asked nervously. Since he had seen this step, he must have an idea in his heart. Yin Nuashing hesitated for a while, frowned slightly, and nodded. There are 4 songs in heaven and earth. The prelude to Samsara, the song of the 9 underworlds, the immortal song of the great Tao, and the lingering sound of chaos. Among these 4 songs, the prelude to Samsara is the most mysterious. At the moment when one's soul is annihilated and goes to samsara, if one can personally experience and retain the feelings of samsara and listen to the music on the path of samsara, there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that one can bring a wisp of music to the afterlife. Moreover, it is immersed in the depths of one's soul and needs to be guided out by oneself. The Song of the 9 Underworlds is obtained in the 9 Underworlds prison, commonly known as the Underworld. However, when all lives fall into the 9 Underworlds prison, they will fall into a state of congenital chaos, without much consciousness, numb like the living dead. They will only flow unconsciously along the yellow spring. In that state, being able to remember a wisp of the unique sound that belongs to the underworld prison is no less difficult than obtaining the prelude to samsara. Unfortunately, I don't know how to obtain the immortal song of the Great Path. As for the lingering sound of primal chaos, I don't know if you still remember the last 2 hours that we stayed in the 5 Elements realm. Yin Nuashing looked up at the crowd. Do you mean the space that was blown out by you in the end, and even the void was blown through by you? Chu Yingzhan glanced at him and thought for a while. I remember you said that it was a place of primal chaos at the beginning of the world, a place where even the void had not formed. Nothing existed there, a true primal chaos zone. Yin Nuashing nodded. The chaos lingering sound is the mysterious sound that was born at the beginning of the world. However, it is the sound of the world that is born with the real creation of the world. There's a very, very small chance that it will be born. The real creation of the world. Yuanqi was a little stunned. Then he thought of something. Could it be the birth of the world, the birth of the source world? That's right. It's hard for you to remember this. Yin Nuashing nodded and looked at him very subtly. Yuanqi laughed dryly and scratched his head. He also felt that it was very strange that he could still remember this. Then which one is it? Chu Yingxian pulled the topic back to the original track. Yin Nuashing pondered again and rubbed his hair with his left hand. Only then did the crowd notice that his long hair had returned to its original state. It seemed that he had tied it up again with the soul-stabilizing bracelet. There was no need to hang a lotus root behind his back. There is an 80% chance that it is the immortal song of the Great Path. Among the 4 songs of the world, I have yet to obtain the last one. Yin Nuashing said softly, "Immortal song of the Great Path." The crowd repeated these 4 words. Just by listening to the name, it seemed to be related to the great path of heaven and earth. As they thought about it, they were stunned and looked up blankly. Just now, they seemed to have heard something very important. Chu Yingxian looked up in astonishment. "Idiot, what did you just say?" "The immortal song of the Great Path." Yin Nuashing was shocked by their stares. The crowd roared the last sentence. Yin Nuashing trembled and hurriedly said, "Among the 4 songs of the world, the only one I am missing." Now, they heard it clearly. It was very clear, very clear. It was so clear that they were dumbfounded and stared blankly. After a while, they remembered that he was once a heavenly god and had reincarnated so many times. He had also been to the underworld so many times. It was not impossible for him to obtain it. In other words, you have the prelude to reincarnation, the song of the netherworld, and the lingering sound of primal chaos. Chu Yingxian was stunned. Yin Nuashing nodded and said, "Including the ones that Feng is now and will be born in the future, there is also the heavenly song of Phoenix Tribulation and the divine song of Myriad Tribulations." Well, when I was still Quarter Moon, I already knew Feng. However, at that time, she was already in her complete form and had mastered the 2 songs. At that time, even if I formed a soul contract with her, I would not be able to obtain the heavenly song of Phoenix Tribulation and the divine song of Myriad Tribulations. These 2 songs are the only ones that cannot be shared through a soul contract. I can only form a soul contract with a phoenix in its infancy and then watch her grow step by step and break out of her cocoon to obtain these 2 songs. Then, when you saw Feng nearly 20 years ago, Yuanqi suddenly had a guess. Could it be that after you died, Feng had been nestled there as an egg? I really don't know about this. Every time this girl is completely reborn, she will not leave any memory of her previous life. She will be completely wiped out. Apart from the imprint that is branded in her soul, she can only preserve a few irrelevant things. At least those things can give her a little support after each rebirth. Yin Nuashing spread out her hands. Before the final battle, I sealed Liuli for 100 years. Although that girl cried and screamed and wanted to rush out with me, she was still sealed by me in the end. Feng, it was the same. I did not form a soul contract with her at that time. It was when I sealed her. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment and said with a little guilty conscience, "I will never forget that resentful look in her eyes for the rest of my life." Everyone was speechless. However, after thinking about it, it seemed that they could not point out or blame her. "You deserve it." Chu Yingxian curled her lips. "You have been like this in the 70 years. It is still the same in this life. Although you have changed now, what you have done is really infuriating." Yin Nuashing scratched her head and let out a long sigh. "Then what can I do? If I didn't stop the 2 of them, 2 more people would have died at most." That was a situation of certain death. There was no way to get through it safely. Those 9 idiots, if they had not sensed my actions in advance and failed to seal them, they would be living well now. Then they would have to bear the reputation of abandoning their friends and live like this for the rest of their lives. Chu Yingxian frowned. "They came for me. They came for me alone. They did not need to fight. There was no reason for them to fight. Yin Nuoxing shook her head and waved her hand. She did not want to talk about it anymore. Let's not talk about this. I have argued with them in the 70 years. It is meaningless. It is all in the past. I will see if I can find their reincarnation in this life. Chu Xianling also hurriedly pulled her sister and shook her head at her. Chu Yingzhan frowned and sighed softly. She did not say anything. Chapter 975. The conversation between the two made the atmosphere in the room a little awkward, but it didn't last for long. This atmosphere was like a fleeting regulator, preventing them from fainting again from those exquisite patterns. Yin Nuoxing pointed at those jigsaw puzzles and explained the meaning within them to everyone. Although some of the words that were related to the level of the gods made them confused, they still listened with great interest. When they looked at those mysterious patterns, they seemed to be in a trance unconsciously. Those patterns turned into clear patterns of light that were reflected in their eyes and shone into their minds. They kept churning, and it felt like something was about to break out of its cocoon. Have you been enlightened? The first to show the state of mind was Qin Yin, who was listening the most seriously. When Yin Nuoxing saw that her eyes were slightly dazed and blurry, he knew that she had entered the state of mind. Yuan Shi and the others also glanced at her and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Then they looked at Yin Nuoxing and continued to listen to his preaching seriously. He didn't interrupt Qin Yan's state of mind. All the information that was transmitted from his preaching didn't have any negative effects. There wouldn't be a situation where one would perish because they accidentally came into contact with the god's forbidden domain. Even you, who had a different cultivation system, could gain something from it. Her and Little Moon's realms were already very loose, and they were almost able to advance to the beginner god level. They only needed an opportunity, but Yin Nuoxing asked them to suppress it and not advance for the time being. It seemed like he had other plans. After the preaching ended, everyone was immersed in a strange state. Dark thoughts were lit up in their minds one after another. Some were in the cultivation of realms, and some were in the cultivation of mystic arts, especially the mystic arts above the divine level. Listening to a preaching related to the god's forbidden domain could make their cultivation easier and save them a lot of meaningless actions such as blindly fumbling about. Other than that, there seemed to be something else. That's right, there was also a bit of a strange rhythm flowing in their minds. It wasn't the celestial music that Yin Nuoxing played before, but it was something else. Its traces were indistinct and untraceable, as if it had descended from the sky and was narrating the great Tao of heaven and earth. It also seemed like an illusion. Yin Nuoxing was also immersed in his preaching. Not only was he preaching, but he was also exploring himself. He was more focused than the others, and even Xian, Ming, and Bing Er didn't know that they had woken up. This lasted for a long time, and it only ended when Yin Nuoxing stopped. He subconsciously lowered his head and saw a little purple soul hanging on his chest, little magic on his head, and little Xian lying on little magic's body, sleeping soundly with her 6 tails curled around him. Everyone gradually woke up, and only then did Yin Nuoxing realize that it was already noon. Did you feel anything special? Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and put away the jigsaw puzzles and other patterns. He looked at everyone, who seemed to have just woken up from a dream, and asked. Qin Yin rubbed her chin with her slender hand and said softly, I heard a faint sound of music. Immortal music? Great Tao. It's very similar, but it's not the same as when Boss played the Phoenix Tribulation Transcendent song. It's that kind of special. Nightmare frowned as he spoke, and he kept shaking his legs, tapping them on the ground quickly. It doesn't have the same charm as the immortal music? Yuanshi guessed. Nightmare slapped his thigh upon hearing this. That's right. The mysterious music reflected in the information revealed by the fragments didn't have the same charm as the immortal music, but it was more profound than ordinary music. Yin Nuoxing pondered for a while. He rested his chin on one hand and tapped his thigh with the other. After a long while, he said, A jigsaw puzzle is a jigsaw puzzle, after all. Only a part of it can be seen, so it's not complete. Then what are we waiting for? Let's hurry up and collect the rest today. Chuchin stood up with a boom and walked toward the door first. Everyone, this young man's speed of action is really fast. After stretching, everyone slowly stood up. Just as Yin Nuoshing was about to stand up, his expression suddenly froze. He pulled Ziyin and Ming Ming, who were beside him, to sit down again. Then, he lowered his voice and said, "Shu." Everyone was stunned. Chu Chun, who had already walked to the door, also turned his head in confusion. He walked back carefully and leaned over to his sister, asking, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Chu Yingxian shrugged and rolled her eyes at him. She said with her eyes, "You ask me, and I don't ask ghosts. Anyway, just be quiet for now." The room fell into an extremely strange state of silence. No one dared to breathe loudly. They stood still and did not dare to move. They saw Yin Nuoshing holding his breath and suppressing his breathing. It was as if he was listening attentively. After a while, he said, "The sound of music." Everyone was shocked. Nightmare and Chu Chun took the lead and rushed out of the room without making any sound. They jumped out of the inn and saw that in the small town in front of the inn, there were no signs of people coming and going. There were only chaotic sounds coming from the street. The two jumped into the air, looked at each other, and frowned. Yin Nuoshing rarely made mistakes. Could it be that they were listening incorrectly? They weren't the only ones who were puzzled. Ziyin and Ming also didn't hear anything. However, Yin Nuoshing didn't seem to be faking it when she listened attentively. They also followed her and closed their eyes to listen attentively. Everyone also sat down, suppressed their breathing and heartbeat, and emptied their minds. Gradually, they heard the sounds outside the inn, the footsteps of people coming and going, and meaningless conversations. In such a state of emptiness, they seemed to hear many unnoticeable sounds, but they still didn't hear anything special, such as the sound of music, Yin Nuoshing said. A few minutes later, suddenly, a sound that they didn't hear before seemed to be transmitted from the depths of the earth. It gradually sounded. The sound was very weak, even softer than the sound of ants crawling. It had a gentle rhythm and gradually became louder and clearer. It was hard to notice under the cover of all the other sounds. It was only when it became so strong that they could hear it. The sound of the music continued to grow louder. On the streets, some of the more powerful people seemed to have sensed something and stopped in their tracks. They pretended to be focused. Those standing in front of the mountain walls and cliffs also seemed to have sensed something and stopped in their tracks. They raised their heads and looked at the sky. "It's here." It didn't sound last night. I thought it wouldn't appear. So it was delayed? The sound gradually grew louder. It seemed to be coming from the entire Celestial King Valley and was heard by everyone at the same time. It wasn't clearly divided into different levels. It was that everyone in the Celestial King Valley heard this sound at the same time. It didn't come from afar, but suddenly appeared. At the same time, as the sound of the music gradually grew louder, the other meaningless sounds in the Celestial King Valley also gradually weakened. In front of the square, Yen Hua suddenly raised his head. When he turned around, he saw that the devilish man had already woken up. The latter tilted his head and couldn't help but smile when he saw that Yen Hua had woken up. "You heard it too?" Yen Hua nodded. His expression was calm and composed. He looked around and saw many people with their eyes closed try to comprehend something. The devilish man was also listening attentively. He focused all his attention on the sound coming from the Celestial King Valley. It was ethereal, mysterious, quiet, steady, and natural. It seemed to be explaining something and telling someone something. "What are you talking about?" He frowned slightly. This music was flawed and didn't feel right. Listening to it didn't give him any special insight. He kept feeling that something was missing. This feeling made him feel slightly frustrated and unable to calm down. When the burly man saw Yen Hua frowning, he was stunned. He thought that something was wrong with Yen Hua and reached out to slap him awake. However, before his hand could touch the devilish man, the latter woke up. "I'm fine. It's just that this music doesn't feel right. It's very wrong. Something is missing." What was missing? His frown deepened. He still couldn't comprehend it and didn't know what was wrong. He didn't feel that there was a problem with the music here. If there was, then it was too childish. There should be something that he hadn't seen clearly. He had to re-examine this celestial King Valley. In the inn, Yin Nuashing was the first to hear this music more than 10 minutes ago. At this moment, only the music was reverberating in his ears and mind. A light flashed across his eyes. Behind him, the 5 divine halos appeared again. When the music came into contact with the image fragments in his mind, the fragments gave off a weak glow. It seemed to be triggered, but the reaction was very weak. This distracted him slightly. While he was recording this unique music, he was also trying to make it resonate with the fragments. These two seemed to have something in common. Sound. Where's this sound? Yin Nuashing's mind flickered rapidly. He heard a lot of sounds and fused them all into his mind, fused them into his divine sense, and placed them into his divine soul and spirit. He wanted to analyze this melody. Ethereal, distant, deep, tranquil, peaceful. With his hands on both sides of his head, Yin Nuashing opened his eyes wide. He should be able to think of something. He needed to think of everything that he could think of and couldn't stop thinking. The owner of the Celestial King Valley was a deity. He needed to use the eyes of a deity and the worldview of a deity to measure something. However, this valley prohibited experts above the level of God and underworld from entering. What did he need to use the thinking and realm of a beginner deity to see? Music, sound from water, gentle, what is it? A lot of messy information was spinning around his mind. It even involved his past memories. The world his mind was spinning rapidly and collapsing. He even wanted to return to the scene when he first obtained 3 of the 4 songs of heaven and earth. He racked his brains, and the river of time kept flowing backward. Deity, 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 beginner deity, what do they have in common? Differences? Deity, deity, transcendence, overlooking the world. No. The music was getting louder and louder. It reverberated throughout the entire Celestial King Valley. It hit the mountain walls and bounced back, forming an echo. The lingering sound made everyone immersed in it. However, Yin Nuashing wasn't immersed in it at all. He was forcibly engraving this piece of music. He had always used the eyes of a deity to look at all problems. However, today he realized that this vision might be his biggest obstacle. He couldn't find the problem because he knew too much. On the contrary, he couldn't find the answer that was only from a small point of view. This was a question that needed to be answered by a beginner deity. Then, how should a beginner deity look at it? Thinking back, how did a beginner deity feel? What kind of vision did a beginner deity have? What kind of worldview did a beginner deity have? At that time, what was Quarter Moon thinking about? Yin Nuashing was struggling. Suddenly, he paused and looked at Xian and Ming beside him. He was stunned for a moment. Then, he gritted his teeth and shook the latter's shoulder. Ming, wake up quickly and help me. Ming's entire body trembled as he woke up in a daze. When he turned his head, he saw Yin Nuashing looking at him with a solemn expression. When he thought of what he had just heard, he hurriedly asked, What? Your realm is higher than Xian's. Maybe, but I'm not sure. We don't have much time now. Later, you will enter my thoughts and see everything that I have realized. Don't care how I see it. Use your vision to see the world that I see. Yin Nuashing shouted softly and hugged Ming tightly into her arms. The 6 wings on her back opened and closed suddenly, wrapping Ming and herself inside. She touched Ming's forehead gently between her eyebrows. Her long, colorful hair gradually stretched out and wrapped around Ming's body. Ming was stunned for a moment. He also extended his hand and hugged Yin Nuashing tightly. He watched as the colorful hair emitted a bright, colorful light that wrapped around the both of them. Yin Nuashing's entire body was emitting a bright light. She closed her eyes, and 5 dim black rings wrapped around the both of them. Immediately, a thought suddenly burrowed into her mind, causing her body to tremble slightly. It was as if she was in an incomparably bright world. Everything around her was incomparably bright. This was the sound of melody in the depths of Yin Nuashing's mind. Some images appeared in front of her. There was a reflection of the entire Immortal King Valley. In the images beside it, there were a few jigsaw puzzles and fragments. A lot of information appeared in those fragments. It was what she had not sensed before, and only Yin Nuashin could sense. The full picture of the Immortal King Valley also appeared in the images. At a glance, one could feel that it was completely different. At the same time, the image of the entire realm of the gods appeared in the images. Looking at it from an extremely distant place, it occupied the entire line of sight. This was the world that she saw through her eyes. It was mysterious and profound. It was completely different from what she saw through her eyes. She was in contact with a world that was different from what she saw through her worldview. Is this what it means to see a world that is completely different in the eyes of different people? Ming was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, she understood what Yin Nuashing meant. She quickly focused her mind and allowed the information to enter her mind. Even though there were many things that she could not understand, she only needed to understand the parts that she should understand. These sounds seem a little familiar. Ming frowned slightly. A trace of doubt flashed across her golden eyes. It was a very familiar sound. What was it? What could make such a sound? This was not a sound made by the object itself. It was a sound that was hidden in an untouchable place and could not be heard by anyone. She was very familiar with it not too long ago. It was probably only 2 or 3 years ago. As she listened, she began to hum softly. Although it did not match the rhythm, it was not a problem. This was not a repetitive rhythm. There was not much regularity to it. She was just imitating it. It was like a beginner who was clumsily singing along with a song or humming the melody. Gradually, she felt that she seemed to have caught on to something. She no longer followed the rhythm of the music. Instead, she repeatedly hummed the melody. Then her eyes widened. She hurriedly said, "Brother, soul furnace. It's the soul. It's the sound of the soul." In the ears of Lawyer Lu and Lawyer Sound, everything in the world had sound. They could clearly capture sounds that ordinary people could not hear. Although as their cultivation increased, they could hear the sound of everything in the world. However, not everyone could understand it. Only Lawyer Lu could clearly distinguish and decipher these rhythms. The sound of a tranquil lake and the sound of a stagnant pool could be heard. The same sound of the wind could be heard differently. The sound of a blooming flower could be heard differently depending on the type of flower. This was their world. It was a magical world that only they could appreciate. Even the soul would produce different sounds depending on the type of soul. A violent soul would have a strong aura, like a volcano. A gentle soul would have a warm sound, like a gentle spring breeze. What Ming heard was the meaningless sounds that she heard when she was trapped in the soul furnace. It was the sound of the soul that only the soul could hear. Just like what she was hearing now, she could no longer distinguish the various sounds that she heard in the soul furnace in detail. However, it was more or less the sound of the soul. Yin Nuashing was shocked. She muttered to the soul in her heart. Then, she changed the rhythm again. She captured the rhythm that was floating in the Immortal King Valley and placed it in the puzzle pieces. She placed the puzzle pieces in front of Ming and said, "Take a look and see what you can see. Or can you hear the different sounds?" The rhythm changed slightly in Ming's ears. As he immersed himself in the puzzle pieces, there were extremely minute changes that caused the entire melody to change. This was a change that only Yin Nuashing could capture. At this moment, she was in his mind. She could feel that this change had been magnified countless times, allowing her to distinguish it clearly. The golden May Mouse stared closely at the puzzle pieces. She could feel information that was different from what she had seen last night surging into her mind. This information was too obvious. She could immediately distinguish it. Oh, listening to the rhythm and looking at the puzzle pieces, Ming felt that something was strange. He seemed to be staring at a world, a vast and boundless world, as if he was staring at the realm of the gods, staring at the realm of the gods. Hearing this answer, Yin Nuashing was also stunned. Then, she heard Ming continue, "Yes, but it's strange. It doesn't feel right. It's a little flawed. Also, there's a very strange feeling. It's like the 6 paths of reincarnation technique that Big Brother cultivates. The twisting and chaotic feeling is very similar. 6 paths of reincarnation technique. Reincarnation technique? Yin Nuoshing frowned. After a moment, she was shocked. Is it reincarnation? Ming shook his head gently. I don't know. I haven't experienced reincarnation. However, if Big Brother thinks it is, then it should be. Yin Nuoshing gritted her teeth. Is there anything else? As he spoke, he put all kinds of images and changed rhythms in front of her so that she could hear and see different situations at any time. The number of combinations of images that appeared in front of her surprised Ming. Could he see the world from so many different angles at once? The eyes of the gods were somewhat difficult to understand. It was precisely because of this that they could understand so many things better. After looking at it seriously for a long time, Ming saw about 30 different kinds of images. After he finished looking, he shook his head gently. I can't see anything else. Yin Nuoshing was silent for a moment. Then she nodded. Come out first. After that, she sank into deep thought. The voice of the soul, the realm of the gods, reincarnation. As she muttered, she seemed to inadvertently understand something. She couldn't help but open her eyes wide. She muttered to herself, so it's like this? What kind of things? A pair of golden Mei Mao barged into his line of sight. They were tightly pressed together. Ming suddenly woke up. Mei Mao looked at him playfully. As she spoke, her orchid fragrance blew on his face. At this time, Yin Nuoshing didn't realize that the two of them were so close and intimate. She even said very seriously, Reincarnation, the soul, the realm of the gods. I understand now. The god who left one of the 9 songs of the immortal emperor here was once deducing and guiding another kind of celestial song to form here. It was indeed one of the 4 songs of the heavens and earth, the celestial song of the great Tao. Ming struggled lightly and found that she couldn't break free. Her brother was in a very serious state and couldn't react for a while. However, Ming didn't feel uncomfortable. Instead, she felt a little happy. When she heard this, she couldn't help but ask why. You said that you saw the realm of the gods. That's what you saw and heard after the music and the puzzle were combined. The celestial song of the great Tao. Although I don't know how it was born, I know that it represents the entire realm of the gods. In the ancient times, it was also known as the realm of the gods' great Tao. It itself represented the realm of the gods. There's a flaw because the puzzle itself isn't complete. Yin Nuoshing said. Then, she paused for a moment to organize her words. As for reincarnation, it's the combination of the 2 things that you saw just now. When Ming heard this, she also used her little brain to think. She put these few factors together and combined them with what Yin Nuoshing mentioned before. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. The reincarnation of the soul. That God is using time to guide the birth of the celestial song of the great Tao here. And then, she said too quickly and couldn't finish her sentence. Then, he will enter reincarnation, the reincarnation of the soul. The next time he comes to the immortal King Valley, he will obtain the celestial song of the great Tao. Perhaps there's something left here that can allow him to recover his memories before reincarnation and retrieve the immortal king battle song. Yin Nuoshing said seriously. Ming's breathing stopped. However, after thinking about it carefully, she felt that something was wrong. But after the reincarnation of the soul, won't he lose all his memories? Didn't brother also forget everything before he returned to the world of the gods? But he can leave behind a deep guide in the depths of his soul. This guide will subtly influence his reincarnated self to make different choices. Even he himself won't know that what he's doing is meaningful. It's not a random choice. Just like me, I'm searching for the past. This is the influence of the will in my soul that can't be erased, Yin Nuoshing said. When Ming heard this, she pondered for a moment. If this was really the case, then everything made sense. The reason why they didn't let experts above the level of God enter was because they were worried that those at a higher level would see through everything and take the lead in obtaining the celestial song of the great Tao. This is information that can only be discerned by the eyes of the gods. However, It's information that can only be seen through the worldview of the primary level gods. If we let gods, or even gods of a higher level in here, they'll be able to figure it out one day if they spend more time. Give me 10 days, and I'll probably be able to figure it out again. It's just a little time, Yin Nuashing said. Those high-level gods who have admitted in the rumors that the music that's fluttering in the immortal King Valley is the Celestial Emperor's 9 songs, and that it's filled with the aura of war, guess that it might be the immortal King battle song. This might also be a form of misdirection and a precautionary measure. To us, this song doesn't have any murderous aura. However, to high-level gods, this might not be the case. That's right. The sound that's fluttering in the immortal King Valley, to them, wasn't filled with a murderous aura of war. Even if the immortal King battle song really existed in this valley, it wouldn't be the one that's fluttering in the air now. The song that's fluttering in the air now was just the flawed version of the Great Tao's celestial song. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.